it today, but Region 4 is represented. And Bill Wathen from Glenn County, our director from Glenn County, is the alternate for Region 3, and he'll be here, and I think he's going to be sort of completing Becky's term as we go through this, and all others are represented. I think Adam Dondro from the state wasn't able to join us in person, but he's going to attempt to join us via Zoom. So with that, I think quorum's been established. You can kick things off, Michael.
All right, thank you, John. Virgilio can check in when he gets on the call, and same with Adam. So we'll go ahead and proceed. I looked at the agenda. We have, it looks like 4 consent items. John will go into those a little bit more. And then we have 11 informational items. So we should be able to progress at a good clip and get everybody through the meeting and out on time. So I want to, at this time, then call for any public comment on items not listed on the agenda. Well, call the meeting to order, and now I'll ask for public comments on any items not listed on the agenda at this time. Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and proceed into our action items, which I believe are all consent items. John, is that correct?
That is correct. First one is the minutes. All the action items have either been closed out or documented in the minutes themselves as we closed out, or else are on or recurring items or on the agenda. So I'm going to skip over those quickly. The next one is approval of Accenture Change Notice 32. This change notice includes adjustments to previously approved Change Notice 8. It does some adjustments, some places where on the DCFS IVR call flow to extend agent support to align with M&E transition period, it had some net reductions of about 13,000. There's additional hours required for security technical architecture, NIST controls, and to align with our final scope for a net increase of about 70,000 on some of those security controls. This change notice will also utilize about $3 million for multiple security-related enhancements to align with NIST Revision 5 and Zero Trust Architecture, which is in our IAPDU. We're moving some of those things forward as quickly as possible. And it includes 2 premise items, CalFresh simplification and family unification on those items. It's also, it's going to leave probably a lower balance on that bucket that we tap into. So we can anticipate right now we have an amendment that's going to be going through state review to replenish that bucket that the board will be taking action on at a future meeting. We also have some county purchases for lobby kiosks as we go forward. So the cost of this change notice are funded through the IAPDU, as I mentioned, premise funding, and county funding for the county purchase, and the current year costs are accounted for in the state fiscal year, and the JPA project budget as approved by the JPA. Next item is approval of Gainwell Central Print Change Order 1, which includes 1 premise item, the Medi-Cal renewal packets, and 4 county purchases associated with the electronic return mailing notification pilot, which Dawn's going to be doing an update on later on in the agenda. And our last consent item is we're seeking approval for a contract amendment with our attorneys, Cronick, Moskovitz, Tiedemann, and Girard, which includes a contract extension through August 23rd of 2026. So that exercises all the extensions under the contract, and also provides a rate adjustment, which is an increase in their rates. Our PMO's done a market survey. Their rates are still significantly below I'd say market value on those items. We're getting a good deal, but it does increase them over what we contracted for about 5 years ago during that period. And all of those costs are funded through the IAPDU. Current year costs are accounted for in the JPA budget that has been approved by the JPA. with that, Michael, we could open it up for questions or for the board to take action.
Thanks, John. Just a quick question on the, on D. So what is the extension for? What's the term?
The term is today through August 23rd, 2026. We were a little bit delayed in actually exercising this amendment with our attorneys, and we've been operating under the terms available in the contract without formally coming back. And so we are currently using our older rate structure. And again, we're updating the rate structure, and it's from today's date through August of 2026. And then we'll get the PMO and procurement teams working within those timeframes to do a legal procurement as we get closer to that date.
Okay, thank you. That answered my follow-up question. Then I had a question on the B, on the security enhancements. Does that incorporate anything new that we've learned from our latest security incident in that?
I think I would probably table that a little bit because we're going to do an update on our security incident. And I think that, yes, we want to move a lot of those things forward that are associated with zero trust architecture and a NIST update and bringing those items forward as quickly as possible. Some of those things will help us secure our perimeter and all of those types of things as we go forward. So let's put a pin in that one, Michael, and then we'll make sure that we revisit that as we talk about our security incident in just a few minutes.
Okay, I appreciate that. Any other comments or questions from our board members or our state partners on this slate of consent items? Okay, hearing none, seeing none. Any public comment? Okay, hearing none, seeing none. We'll go ahead and move on to our information. Oh, wait, we need to take a vote on this. Okay, do I have a motion to approve the slate? I'm out of practice here.
On just moved.
Second? Do we have a second? I'll second.
I think Diana second here in the room, so I'll just
She
take
beat me.
that as a yes vote from you, Michael.
Thank you.
All right, Marla?
Yes.
Kelly?
Yes.
Great. Greg? Yes. Bill?
Yes.
Thank you. Francina?
Yes.
Very good. Paula?
Yes.
Thank you. Kristen?
Yes.
Thank you. And Rogelio?
Yes.
Thank you very much. All right, I think that moves us on to our informational items, and we will right off the Benefits Cal user account security incidents that we've been talking to your staff about quite often. So, Rachel, I think you're going to come on and start us off.
I am. Yes, I am. So wanted to provide an update. When we last met, what we have actually done in the last month around the Benefits Cal security update. We went back and extended what we're calling our look-back period to see if we had similar observations around activities that were suspicious. So we extended that period of time to look back. We originally went 90 days when we started. We went back to 180 days, and we now are in the process of doing a full year look-back period.
Hey, Rachel, before we just go back sort of mid-story, could you just do the 30-second sort of review of where we're at and what took place, February, how many accounts we have, how many have been disabled and things like that, just to do a quick look back.
Thank you, Jeff, for that. Yes, I can. So when we last met, we talked about that there had been an incident, and we had uncovered a number of accounts that had been potentially compromised. We've gone back and we've been having meetings on a weekly basis to talk about, actually multiple times during the week, to look at how many accounts could have been impacted. Of those accounts that have potentially impacted, how many of them we know to have had used the system during that period of time. And we have taken steps to protect those individual accounts by doing a couple of things. We have forced certain accounts into a deactivation status that were identified as those that have been potentially compromised. And for those that had additional attributes on them, we've actually, I'll say we've bifurcated them into those that we felt more comfortable that they could do a self-service password reset versus those that they would need to call the county to authenticate to get their accounts reactivated, because there were two degrees of, I'll say 2 degrees of accounts in terms of the level of patterns that we were seeing on these particular accounts. So we bifurcated the two of them. So we've gone through a process over the course of the last month that we have been monitoring the number of accounts that needed to be reactivated, the number of accounts that needed to have password resets, and we've been updates on how many of those accounts have been reactivated over the course of February until current date. So that is what has transpired from when we discovered the particular incident, and what we have been doing is we've been doing analysis on the accounts to identify where there has been any potential suspicious activity. We've taken steps to deactivate accounts. We've also taken steps to implement multi-factor authentication. That is now a requirement in the system, and we have also gone through steps to disable the case linking functionality as well, because that was one area that if people get access to case linking, they would get access to case information, and so we wanted an additional layer of protection that was there as well. So that's what's transpired since we last met from activities that have taken place.
But again, just from a context standpoint, 38 million accounts.
I was going to get the funnel. Yes. So if we look at it from a big picture, it's actually closer to 30. We're almost at 39. So 39 million accounts have been created. Oh my gosh, sorry, 3.9. Thank you, Sorrenton. 3.9 million accounts. Thank you. 3.9 million accounts have been created. We have had, and I need to get the exact number, but there's just over 28,000 accounts that have been identified as potentially compromised out of that 3.9 million. And then we have identified out of that 28,000 that there were, some of those were active accounts, some of those were meaning that they have active cases, some of them did not have active cases. Out of that 28,000, it was 23,000 plus, Arnold?
That's correct.
23,000 plus that have active cases that are tied to them out of that number. Out of the 23,000, Arnold, you're going to have to help me, the 19,000 accounts that we had.
So the 23,000, 2,000 have already been activated.
Yep.
The 21,000 have remained that to be activated, have broken out between those that have active cases and those that do not have active cases. I think we're around 13,000 of those actually have active cases.
Yep.
And so what we're going to do is we're doing the analysis to find out how frequently those users were logging into their accounts before they were deactivated, and so we can potentially give out this to the county for a proactive reach out to them.
Okay.
Rachel, when you
Yeah.
first started to describe the context of this, you said they fell into two different categories, ones that could do self-service resets and one that actually would have to call the county to reestablish. What are the numbers that go with those two different data sets?
I'm going to pull it up just for a second, Michael, pull up the slide. Yesterday, we had said about 5,000 plus that were in the self-service password reset out of that total of 28,000. So we had about 23,000 of them that fell into the category of needing to be reactivated, and 5,000 plus, give or less, was into the password reset. But I'll get the actual numbers. We're just pulling up the slide.
And then just one more item from our state partners on clarifying how we were able to determine the accounts were compromised. And just a little bit on that, Arnold, some of the research that was done. I think we were monitoring some of the inflow of traffic from IP addresses till we have identified it. And then it looked like go on from there and sort of talk about how we identified it and then how we identified that they were compromised.
Right. Just to rewind a little bit, how these accounts were compromised compromised is all sourced back to the fact that it looks like they reused their credentials that they had established on other sites. And that through other data breaches that you've been reading about in the headlines, those lists of account password combinations are available on the dark web. And so what happened is a threat actor got a hold of one of those lists, or multiple of those lists, we are unable to determine exactly what. And then what they did is they did what we call the credential stuffing, where they...
Can you pass the mic over to Arnold?
Oh, yes.
Do I need to restart, or for those on the line, or are we okay?
Yes, please.
Okay, so I'll restart. So just to re-ground everybody on the nature of the incident. What we're seeing is that this incident is sourced back to reuse of accounts and passwords by the account holder, the actual user. They may have, that then led to the compromise. So what happens is they have the same account, same password across multiple websites. In some cases, other websites get compromised, and the threat actors are able to obtain those accounts and passwords, lists of them, that then become available on what's called the dark web, which is where a lot of nefarious, illegal activity is occurring. So then those lists are obtained, and the threat actors then turn around and start trying those passwords on other websites, of which Benefits Cal was one of those websites. The attack escalated into what's called credential stuffing, which is where they start doing an automated, so instead of having people at the computers trying each one of those names and passwords, they then automate it so that they take that list that they obtained and have a bot that goes ahead and throws it through and tests to say, is it valid? So we detected the sources where that activity was coming from. And that's where we then traced that activity from those sources to see the actual login event on Benefits Cal, which then told us which of the accounts could have potentially been compromised because the activity was coming from those malicious sources. And then the Benefits Cal team went through the further analysis as to how far into Benefits Cal did they get that would have then allowed the data to be visible. So again, to reemphasize, a lot of this has started from reuse of those accounts and passwords. And so on the 14th and 15th, when Benefits Cal went down and we forced the enablement of MFA, that's how you can stop and slow down that reuse of those passwords, because now they have to go through the multi-factor authentication and enter in a one-time password code that they receive via text or via email. And so that's how you slow down those threat actors from continuing to be able to reuse those old credentials. So that's why we took the precautionary step of, for all the accounts that were accessed from those sources, we either went through a deactivation if they had active cases, or we went through a forced password reset if the account hadn't been accessed during the time from any of those malicious cases and there wasn't an active case on it. So we were trying to reduce the flow of the calls into the counties, because for those accounts that are deactivated, the counties have to re-authenticate the person on the phone, tell them to change their password on their email, and then put in the reactivation request for the Benefits Cal account. So that's the process that we went through to identify the activity. Go ahead.
Arnold, just a quick question. I don't want to muddy this with too much technical aspect of it, but I'm just looking at the completed and then the planned. So if the completed has this mandatory MFA piece and they're going to go through that, what is the additional security of it hitting them with another MFA? And is this going to be in the same session when they go to link the case that it'll make them do an MFA again?
Yes, because what we want to make sure happens is the actual, primary on the case. We want to make sure that that primary is authorization to link that case to that account, because up until that point, we haven't actually validated that whoever created that benefits cal is actually the primary on that case. And so that's why we want to make sure that before we actually allow the case linkage to occur, we've authenticated that the person who created that benefits cal account is authorized to link to that primary on that case. So that's why we need to have the that second MFA challenge on case linkage.
And Michael, I had the same question, and sort of the analogy that someone walked me through is if you picture your house and you picture a fence around your house, that's your yard. And you have an MFA, multi-factor authentication, to get in the gate into your front yard as you're coming up to the front porch. That's benefits cal. They've gotten on to benefits cal. They've done multi-factor authentication to do that. Case linking allows them to actually come into the house, the CalSAW's house where that sensitive PII data exists. That linking hasn't occurred yet. So if somebody's going to get that linking to be done to get into the house where that data exists, doing another multi-factor authentication with CalSAW's specific data to be able to, validating their identity to make sure that they can't just get into the yard, but they can get into the house, and that's the most sensitive transaction, and that's why two forms of MFA are needed on that, and the one MFA will not suffice.
Okay, I appreciate the analogy, but I am kind of curious, is it doing something different the second time, Arnold, than it did the first time? Because if it runs the same thing, it's sort of redundant, right?
Well, the whole challenge that we're trying to verify is that the person who created and owns that benefits cal account is actually the person that is the primary and owns that case that we're trying to link to so that you get the information.
Okay, so it actually is two different levels of validation. It's not the same.
That is
twice.
correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
we're trying to verify that Arnold, who created the benefits cal account, is the same Arnold that is on the case.
Okay, got it. Because they're kind of separated. So once they've done the linking, then they no longer have to have that happen again when they go back into access the case. Okay. All right.
Because
thank you.
then we said the two Arnolds are the same person, and therefore they only have to use the single MFA at the benefits cal login.
So that tightens up our security from what it even originally was.
Correct.
Okay.
I was going to say, Michael, that first level of authentication with the account creation is really intended to be about the account, because we do send messages to people to do password resets. So it's really about the account that's getting authenticated at the beginning versus the individual getting authenticated, which is at the case linking level.
Okay. I'm sorry to belabor it. I just never quite understood why there's like a benefits cal account that's not linked to cases. I'm like, what's the point of that? But maybe I don't understand the two-layer architecture, but that's why I didn't want to get into a technical discussion. But I think I understand what you get explaining here.
Well, think about the use case where somebody is submitting their application, and so the case actually hasn't been set up.
Exactly, yeah. If they're just a brand new applicant, you wouldn't have them be a primary applicant at that point until after the application gets processed. Yeah.
All right, you just explained it to me. Thank you.
Okay.
Michael, this is Marla. I have a question as well. I've got a question, just as clarification. So the second round, the second MFA and case linking is the one that they have to talk to a county worker to do, and the county worker is authenticating their identification, and then they can be connected?
Currently, because it is disabled, Marla, they cannot link a case. So the second level through benefits cal, right now you cannot link a case. When MFA gets enabled, which is one of our future implementations that we're doing, it will not require a worker to intervene in the future. The only reason that workers are right now intervening is instances where they have exceptions, where the case linking logic is not matching exactly. if case linking is not matching exactly. But in the future, if they are able to authenticate through MFA and they can then link their case, it won't have to go to a worker to intervene.
But for the people the 28,000 that were potentially compromised, I think
Yep.
how many of those are the counties having to talk to?
So of the 28,000, maybe I'll start it, I wish I had the funnel graph. Of the 28,000 that we have, those accounts have all been, out of the 28,000, 23,000 have been deactivated. They will have to call the county to reactivate their account. They may have access to their case if they had previously linked it. If they did not have access to their case before, they don't have the ability right now to link their case, okay? So then the balance of individuals, which I think I put in the chat, the 5,103, those individuals can reset their password online. They do not need to call the county. If they had their case linked previously, they still will have access to their case information. If they did not have it linked previously, they're going to have to wait until we re-enable the case linking functionality, which is currently disabled.
Thank you for that.
Okay, sure.
Oh, I do have a question. This is Don. I'm just trying to reconcile in my mind. So if a new client comes in, they apply, and then they go online to create a benefits account, they will not be able to link their case, and they pretty much can't use benefits account until the MFA is activated as well.
Unless, I'm going to give you one exception. I think on what you're saying is accurate. If they created an account as part of the application process, the case is automatically linked when it gets registered. It's only if they apply through other means, like Get CalFresh, a community-based organization, they come into the office, or they create an account after the fact, they would not be able to link until this gets re-enabled in the system. Okay.
And we've sent out a fact sheet that said in those situations, there's other ways to go about looking up your EBT balance. If you need to send in verifications, if you need to send in a SAR-7, if you need to do those things, there's other ways to be able to do that. And we've sent out a fact sheet to the counties to be able to provide that. And provided it to the CBOs as well.
Correct.
Advocates.
And we feel pretty firm about the date that we have down there, because it seems like that's going to be kind of a key date on that case linkage.
As it stands right now, Michael, we are tracking towards that date for the release. Yes.
All right.
If we can get it earlier, we can do it as a priority release, but right now it is the 25th, but if we can get it earlier, we would do it as a priority.
Okay, let's keep rolling.
Okay, so we have talked about the remediations that we have done. We gave a little bit of the background. If we go to the next slide, Jen, wanted to give a little bit of an update on communications. In terms of the communications that have been done so far, I had mentioned that we've been doing county briefings. They were daily. We've moved them to twice a week. John had mentioned that we sent out a fact sheet that went out to all of the counties to help people understand how to access services during this time when case linking is not available. We've created a flyer that has been reviewed by multiple stakeholder groups. It is available in all threshold languages. That is available for counties to put on their websites, to hand out to individuals if they come into the office. We are in the process right now of doing social media messaging that we're making available to the counties that you all can amplify. It will be made available in all the threshold languages as well. And then we had a request for a couple of webinars, both from the CBO community as well as from the counties, so that they can better understand that if they encounter a call that's coming in from a customer or someone that's coming in from the office, how do they navigate the case linking situation? How do they navigate if they if they don't have access to their account, if they need to call the county to reactivate the account? So we have a webinar that's scheduled for next Monday for the community-based organizations. It's opened up to all the counties too. So the counties can attend, the CBOs can attend, and then we do have a county webinar scheduled for the week following on the 25th. is when the county webinar is gonna take place. Okay, I think that's it. Michael?
So just one thing to summarize is, people have been talking about it generically that says benefits is breached, and I know sometimes language is important. The system didn't get breached. This was using valid credentials that were obtained from a third party to be able to come in and actually access the system. So somebody got the keys and they came through the front door on those items. So we've mitigated that through looking at additional things to our firewall to be able to look at bot traffic and to better stop that at that point, putting in multi-factor authentication in 2 spots very quickly to be able to do that, and for the counts that we can see that somebody actually went in and looked at those and traced those, disabling those, having the counties actually validate people and sending correspondence out to those individuals. Thank goodness we had emails on them. Send them out because they got them, they've opened them, they've read that, they've contacted the counties, and then to reactivate once your staff do that, doing a warm transfer over to technical service desk. We've streamlined some things, actually almost real time. I think we started yesterday with our technical service desk, so it is a one and done procedure. There used to be a little bit of back and forth between the technical help desk and your staff to re-enable that account. We've streamlined that with the technical service desk and your staff to be able to have the technical service desk re-enable that, so it makes it a little bit more streamlined as we go forward. We know when we compare all of the numbers, the number of disabled accounts to the number of accounts that have been reactivated, that it looks like there's a disparity between that. So that's what we're going back to and looking at, are there frequent users and how do they equate to the ones that have been reactivated? And if there's a delta there, that we can give some list to the counties to see if you want to do that proactive reach out on those frequent users to be able to have your staff reach out to them and sort of move through that process to close that gap a little bit. Some of them probably went in, started out, applied, did one thing, and then just forgot about it until the next time they have to do something. Other folks, frequent users, are there, daily or weekly checking things. Seems like those are the people that are calling the most. So with that, Michael, turn it back to you for additional questions.
Thank you, John. I appreciate the clarification. I think we did discuss that last meeting in terms of what this actually represented, and it is basically the fact that the passwords were basically hacked out somewhere else, that they might have shared the same password on their Benefits Cal accounts, which is something that happens pretty frequently out there if you share passwords across multiple sites. So there was an ask about education and what we can try to do to educate our users to make sure they're using unique passwords for this site going forward as much as possible. And do any of those flyers or any of the things we put up on the website respond to that?
Yeah, we specifically gave some, I'd say, password maintenance guidance, helpful tips and things like that. So that is one of the highlights, and the technical service desk is doing that on every single call that they're re-enabling, talking about how to maintain your passwords effectively.
And then just one other wrinkle to that I'd just throw out to Rachel and her team is the password setting process. If there's ways to be, to update what we're telling the folks when they're setting up their password originally to help meld that in, because I'm creating flyers as a static, but I want to make sure that the dynamic screens actually advise them instead of just saying your password needs to be this many digits, that it can actually make suggestions on uniqueness.
Yes,
Okay.
Michael, we are taking this one specifically as part of the research activity because we want to sit with actual users as they're creating their passwords to see how that language would actually be understood. So we'll be doing it as part of our UCD effort.
I appreciate that. It needs to be plain language, so thank you. Any other comments or questions from our board members or state partners on this topic?
John, I just wanted to double check back to your original analogy. So it sounds like for 28,000 cases, the bad actor came in the gate, and for 23,000 cases, we think they came in the door.
Potentially.
Potentially came in the door.
Potentially came in the
Okay,
door, because there's
okay.
nothing that is, the thing that's challenging is it's hard to distinguish between if it was the real person or not. Yeah, so it's potential. Yes. Yep.
And for those of you on Zoom, it was potentially on that one, so there was an extra bit of caution on those things as we disabled it.
Okay, Marla, any other questions or comments from our board members, state partners? Okay, hearing none, we'll go over to public comment, and I see Jen Tracy has her hand up, so I'll go to Jen first.
Yeah, thanks, Michael.
Mhm.
First, I just want to acknowledge the exceptional work of Benefits Cal and the CalSAWS team in identifying the security issue, securing client information, and keeping the co-leads informed. We received a contact really early on to get an update about what was happening and be able to provide some feedback. And we understand, like, right now it's really hard for clients and our CBO assisters trying to help people with the inability to link their cases to the Benefits Cal account, but we understand that that is an important part of making sure we can secure client information and protect their critical personal information and potentially their EBT dollars. So just first want to say a big thank you from advocates, assisters, and the public for securing the information and working hard to implement the security measures. Really appreciate the communication that's been coming out to support people. But I will say that it seems like this is a learning opportunity about how quickly we communicate to clients. It took a number of weeks to get information to clients, to update the website so that people weren't going into dead ends of trying to link their case. And we know that in the urgent days that, it's kind of like get that first fire put out before we do some other stuff. But by not providing clear information and making adjustments to the websites early, clients were left without information. They flooded counties with requests for support that counties weren't ready to meet. The messages about security were buried in the homepage rather than being provided to people like where they're going to be. Like when I go to use an account, I just go straight to login. I don't spend time reading the messages on the homepage before I try to log in and do business. And so thinking about meeting clients where they are, making sure that information is like just in time kind of approach, and having a better process or a checklist so that the next time something happens, which we hope it doesn't, but we know we live in a world where this stuff is going to keep happening, that there can be a quicker response to support clients, communicate to them, and educate them about what their alternatives are. We went through a whole end of the month of reports being due and people not being able to use the approach that they'd planned on using and not having messaging to them about what their alternatives were for weeks. So I just hope we can see this as a learning opportunity for the project to find a way to more strongly integrate client communication needs in their response plans, and making sure that it's really clear, like who's responsible, what kinds of changes need to be considered, and get that implemented in a timely, effective way so that folks don't have to try to inundate the county with phone calls and visits to the office if they have another option that they can use. So thank you again for protecting client data, and we'd love to partner to have some sort of checklist or collaborative plan to make sure that if this happens again, clients can get that information that they need right away.
Okay, thank you, Jen. I appreciate the input. And every crisis or issue has an opportunity for us for learning. So this will be the same. And I do expect us to have an after action look back and a best practices plan going forward. So we'll go ahead and make sure that client communications is part of that, especially in the early stages when we're trying to find out exactly what's going on. So thank you. Appreciate the input. Any other public comment? Okay, we'll go ahead and move on to our next item. I believe that's final acceptance, John.
Yeah, next one, we've been talking to, both the board and the project steering committee for months now about final acceptance, and we just wanted to tell you where we are, and I'm gonna turn it over to Dan Dean, our QA project manager, to sort of give us an overview and sort of walk through where we're at this point in time.
Thank you, John. We had originally allocated about minutes for this topic because I think we might be able to present all of the final evidence. We're still working through some things. One of those you just heard about, which is the security and some hardening activities, working both with Benefits Cal and the CalSAWS teams. And we're also working through items related to reports, which will be a subsequent topic, and they'll come up in our risks. So we're re-engaging from an ISS perspective to take some of the material that's coming out of those county meetings and push back out to the 18 counties to assist them with reports. So the project is elected to keep final acceptance open. We'll be bringing it back at a future date. We do have a few slides just to share with where we are today and what our plans are go forward. So some of this you've seen before. The first three items there are items we've signed off in prior years. Since we last met, we did get through central print final acceptance. We did present the evidence last month. I have a wrap-up slide where I'll show that again just as a reminder. That completed about a week and a half ago. We are keeping open. That's why there's two little open boxes there, both the CalSAWS and CalWIN ISS. And Arnold will speak to CalSAWS, Rachel ISS, and then I'll wrap it up. So next slide, please.
All right, so I won't recover the journey. I did that last month. We're really just focused on the lower right-hand side around the milestone 11. We're reviewing the results of the migration final acceptance period, which was February 1st through March 1st. So we are still reviewing that with our QA and consortium partners, and we still plan on coming back with step 12, asking for final acceptance. So with that, I'll hand over to Rachel, who can talk through ISS.
Perfect. And Dan had alluded to that we are going to have a deeper conversation on reports breakout. Keeping acceptance open, there's an area that we are extending our team right now, which is on change management related activities and post-implementation support. That is focused specifically right now on reporting. There are some other observations that as the team is supporting that also that we are taking of note. The change to the new ticketing process was something that has come out as well that we want to make sure that we are following up on and following through to make sure that the 18 counties have migrated onto that as well. So we've got teams that have been extended to help out with getting, working with the reports team and integrating with that team to navigate the CalWIN counties through this process. But Jarek will talk about that in a little bit with Sean.
Two slides to wrap up. First one highlights the items we will come back at a future date and confirm with you all on. The open boxes are associated with CalSAWS migration final acceptance, point to a confirmation of all the performance standards, requirements, and deficiencies are wrapped up. We're in the midst of reviewing the draft of the certification as we speak. And on the ISS side, we are working through the implementation certification report. We'll probably be including some information that's out of the reports effort as well. Next slide, please. This highlights what closed out for central print and the items that were checked off. All those words map to items that are in the contract language for central print final acceptance. And then just a reminder that the quality assurance team will be continuing to participate throughout M&O and M&E types of activities. We do our release management for each general release, independent test, as well as QA review, technical maintenance and upgrade planning. That's pretty much a daily and weekly activity, and then performance and SLA reviews in the areas of imaging, contact center, Benefits Cal, OCAT, CalSAWS, and central print. That, Michael, back to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dean. Thank you, Rachel. John, I'm happy to see us taking a good close look at reporting as part of our final acceptance. Final acceptance is a huge step. It's a major milestone in the project, and I know that reporting is something that we really need to shore up. So I'm very anxious to see how we're coming in that particular space as we approach a final acceptance on the ISS particular area of the engagement. So thank you very much for you guys diving into this and ensuring that our Calhoun counties are feeling more comfortable with reporting before we sign on and move this forward.
Yep, Michael, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. I think one of the things that Rachel brought up too, not only change management for reports on methodologies that they'll talk about, but on ticketing. And I know that as we work through that ticketing process is so very important to be able to trigger activities by the team and do that. So we want to, again, stress that, make sure that that becomes muscle memory of the counties to, when in doubt, put in a ticket. And we have to hone our processes as well. So again, more change management on that as well.
I appreciate that focus as well. Any other comments or questions from our board members or state partners on this presentation item? Okay, hearing none. Any public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move forward. Thank you, John. Thanks, team.
Yep. And then we'll go on to our M&E risks and go through the high-level risks that we have open.
Yes, so I will pick up with this and also call on my friends as we go through each of the individual risks. If we look at it, we're relatively flat as far as what our risk and issue trend profile is from February to March. If we move on to our next slide, we'll go into our details. And so with this, we'll start out with our CalSAWS project management risks. I'll start out with 102 and ask Holly to help.
Thanks, Arnold. The first one is our annual project funding. Lack of funding may cause schedule delays or reduction in scope. This is the ongoing risk that we've been tracking. We're tracking at a medium risk level due to the state's budget situation, and that we have requested additional funding through the May revise and our IAPDU and various premise items. So we're tracking progress to that, and we'll keep monitoring. And with that, I think I'm handing it to Peggy.
Yes, Peggy will come on and talk through 203.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just a quick update on our risk for our project communications and our effort in continuing to evolve our communication channels to meet the needs of our audience. So in this risk, we include our effort for our strike teams on the web portal and communication. So the web portal strike team has started back up again. They did do a quick hit effort to a quick win effort that resulted in a CIT going out to the counties for a quick reference guide on how to, navigate through the web portal. Next steps are continuing our long-term approach for updating, cleaning up, and maintaining and archiving our web portal. On our communication strike team, which focuses on our CITs and CR5s, we have done a lot of work there. There's a pilot going on to review the process that we've developed. That pilot has been completed, and feedback is being gathered to make sure that the new processes are going to continue to work. Next week, we start our M&E roadshows, which later on in the agenda, I'll be giving you an update on that. But next week, our first roadshow is scheduled to be out in the counties. And then finally, our production operation team continues to look at the different communications that we utilize internally. There was an update posted on the web portal that includes the schedule of our CalSAWS and Benefits Cal planned maintenance and outage windows. So that in a nutshell wraps it up. Back to you, Arnold.
Thank you, Peggy. Karen, if I could ask you to cover 201 and 231 or 239 next.
Sure. On 201, the pace of policy may exceed the capacity of the project teams. We continue to provide estimates as the budget is being worked through, and help the state be able to, make decisions on, additional functionality and that sort of thing. And so this keeps moving forward. It's pretty steady at this point in time. We will see what comes out of the budget. So for probably the next couple months, it'll remain pretty steady, and then we'll see what comes out of the budget. And then on 239, the lack of consistent state language translations, we're happy to report that both CDSS and DHCS are moving or have moved to the same software that we use for our correspondence. And this is very helpful. DHCS has started using that software. And so we're doing a few minor tweaks on that, but it helps our process. Is the outcome, is it makes it a smoother process to be able to use the same software on the state side as well as on the consortium side. And CDSS is working through their processes to get this software also up and running. So we will look forward to that change coming up as well. So that's it for 201 and 239.
Thank you, Karen. And Lynn, if I could have you join us for 246 and 290.
Yes, good afternoon. Again, this is Lynn Bridwell. So for 246, it's on Get CalFresh. This one has been an item that we've been tracking for many months. I've reported out updates periodically. It did move from a low to a medium, and we are tracking the various items because there's pieces of functionality that we need to continue to work towards adding. And we've been working with CDS as far as determining the scope, the costs, and the timing. As referenced before with the state budget, that may have an impact. So that is a piece of why it was prompted to a medium, so that we can track and figure out what that approach is going to be. So this is one that we will continue to monitor and work through in conjunction with CDSS. If I move to the next one, 290, this is the release of information. I also have an update a little bit later as an agenda item, but the work group continues. We're focusing and looking at operationalizing this now. We've had a lot of work done and a lot of discussions around policy. So our next items will be looking at what kind of support is going to be needed for the next steps on between operationalizing and adding or adjusting any automation to help support that. So the scope and the funding for the automation hasn't been determined yet, but again, we'll be working through this process. And I'll turn it back to you, Arnold.
Thank you, Lynn. And Sean, I'll have you cover the reporting risks on 296 and 297.
All right, for 296 and 297, I'll give an update on kind of both of them together because they are very similar. One's regarding state and fiscal reports. The other one's about ad hoc and management. And then I will have Jarek give an update as well as some of the support he's been providing. For both of these, we finished our listening session. So our phase 3, and we'll talk about this a little bit more later, we had 9 different sessions set up. They were 2 to 3 hours long. We ended up having about 200 participants in those sessions, lots of conversation. I would say about 3 ahas came out of that. I'll call them key takeaways later. I'm realizing aha is a much better word. But it was a very fruitful conversation where we got to really understand some of the differences in terminology and expectations. We're continuing to work through the Los Angeles County reports. We're working through with the counties, getting a list from them, making sure that we are looking at the right ones and that they are technically capable to be expanded statewide. So that's an effort that's in flight as well. We've started our targeted conversations. So we had 2 on the CA 237. That is a statistical caseload report for CalWorks. We also included 2 subordinate reports, as the 253 and 255 in that conversation. We ended up having 4 hours of conversation over 2 meetings. So we were able to have specific scenarios brought up, show the application, show how those were counted or not counted. It was a very fruitful conversation in terms of bringing the counties up to speed and what is the logic behind those reports. We are also starting to have discussions around restarting committee meetings for State and Fiscal Committee, State and Fiscal Reports Committee, to be clear. The other committee has already started back up in January, so we're going to start having regular committee meetings again so that the information flowing from the biweekly meetings is going over to that committee to influence priorities and decisions made there. Going over to the other item, number 297, we did have the ad hoc work group meet on 2/15. They're also meeting again on 3/21. Again, these continue to be very useful meetings for the ad hoc community. If they're not involved in that, wonderful information is made available in there. We have functional experts integrated into that now, so if you have questions about specific data points and what they mean, that is now integrated in that conversation as well. For all of this, I suggest that biweekly communication. If you don't get it and you're interested in knowing what we do, where we stand on reports, it's about 30 to 40 pages. It has every defect, every SCR, meeting minutes, every of our conversations. If it's not in there, we probably don't know about it. So it's a wonderful resource for everybody to use. Jarek, do you want to come on and talk about the support you guys are helping too?
Sure, I'll definitely cover this a little bit more in detail in the next segment, but the support that we are providing is really in working with the Calhoun counties to continue to support adoption, especially around reports. There's three aspects that I'll cover. One is approaching this from the change and learning standpoint. The second piece is around communications. And then the third piece is around the ticketing process and follow-ups regarding getting to the heart of what Calhoun counties are reporting and working through those with them to continue to support adoption. But more to come later as well.
All right, thank you, Jarek. I'll continue on with 298. This is identifying continuous process improvements to improve the welcome bot and authentication bot customer experiences. We have made significant progress on both of those bots, and we believe that this risk is getting ready for retirement. On 299, operationalizing innovation, scaling, and the proof of concept initiatives. On this, we have taken the lessons learned out of the welcome bots and created additional process to be followed by the project for the introduction of any new innovation initiatives so that they scale for production from day one to avoid the experience that occurred. And then on 300, the stability of the CalSOS Enterprise Identity and Access Management Services. Steps have been taken and stability has been shown. The team has another wave that will be going in once we shift focus away from the Benefits Cal security incidents. So with that, I can transition back to Michael for any questions.
Thank you, Arnold. Any questions or comments from our board members or state partners on that array of different discussion topics there? Okay, hearing none. Any public comment on our M&O risk summary? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move forward. I believe that takes us into reports. Yes.
All right. So I want to start off with kind of just re-baselining where we are in this life cycle of conversation. We started out in last fall, late fall, with starting to gather this information. We met with the RMs. We had just finished wave 6, and there was this kind of groundswell of, hey, there's stuff that's going on and we need to focus on this. So phase 1 was in November, December last year. We did meet with the managers. We ended up coming up with the concept of a survey to administer. We co-created that with the regional managers, and we conducted a survey as part of phase 2 that occurred from probably middle December to middle January that had a lot of questions, around 90 to 100 different questions in there. It takes about 90 minutes to complete. And we had one person from each county represent the county and say, hey, I will gather all this information across the various groups and submit that back. Once we received that, we were able to analyze that information. We used a couple of different tools and then gathered the counties into various listening sessions. So there were 9 sessions each about 2 to 3 hours. It was about 200 people in those sessions, and we were able to hear a lot, both from the survey and through those conversations, and we used that survey to target the topics. So, for example, if we had really low scores in these counties in service desk or a specific report, we would put that on the agenda and talk through that with that group in that listening session. And at this point, we're all the way down at the end where we're starting to pull together, you know, what are the things we're doing well, what are the things we need to perhaps prioritize and focus on, and what are some of the differences that we have identified. And I'll pull some of these out today, both from this is what we've identified and our draft recommendations. And again, these recommendations are going to really be in flight. They're not finalized. Some of them, as we continue to discuss, we find a better way or a way that's already happening where we can tie the two together. So going to the next slide, this report survey, again, this is where we got one from each county, albeit it represented lots of different user groups within each county. We had responses from 54 of the 58 counties, so it was a wonderful response rate. I mean, we very rarely see that kind of response rate unless it's a mandatory answer type of thing. So we did administer over the holidays. It was 49 questions and then 34 optional questions. So we liked those because they were more free-form. You know, tell us what you're thinking outside of a, you know, strongly agree to strongly disagree range, and then at times you can get some more specific information. From there, again, we use this to specifically target. We would sit down with Power BI and look at the results and go, okay, it was really, really low here, or really, really high here. That we had to do that a couple of times too. I still remember there was one specific county who said, we have no problems with reports at all. And so that was interesting. So we delved into that, like, why do you have no problems? That seems odd. And it was an interesting, we had a good dialogue about the nature of some of the questions we asked. So it was a good learning experience too, that a few of them were able to be interpreted different ways, which meant we weren't always getting consistent responses. Going to the next slide. So this is where I will provide some of the high-level information. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail on the survey results. But there were 5 questions at the beginning that kind of gave us an overall, where are we with reports? And so this is some of our output out of Power BI. For some reason, it goes top to bottom, and then the grid across goes right to left. Not sure why. Kept trying to play with it, couldn't get it to switch. But starting at the top question, which is, do we adequately meet the needs for management reporting? So from LA, we saw a pretty consistent score across the board, relatively high 4s. From the C4 or former C4 counties, we have a 3.23, which isn't a great score, but definitely isn't as bad as I guess we had thought was going to be coming. Then when we hit to the Cowan counties, it drops down to a 2.11. So that is a significant drop from the C4 side down to the Cowan side. And we kind of see that pattern through most of these. So the next one is the same question, but focused on state reports. We have a 3.03 from the C4 counties, 1.83 from Cowan. The next one is fiscal reports, 3.14 from the C4 counties, and then 2.11 from the Cowan counties. And the next one I really like, basically it says the more time I'm in the system, the better the reports get. Everyone agrees with that. Whether that's organically we're starting to get the information we need through the various meetings and conversations and calling my RMs and emailing Sean and Gloria and Claudia, or it's the further we get away from conversion, the better the data gets, which I think it's a mixture of both. But definitely everyone agrees in the same boat that the farther away I get from my initial conversion, things are better. And if you had been live for LA County, it's the same thing we heard from LA County, that the further they got away from their go lives, the better the data got, the more consistent reports were, and the better experience we had. The last has to do with satisfaction on the level of support available to them. And this is, again, the scores are slightly better, not as good as we'd like them to be, so a lot of our recommendations are around this. But we had a 3.0 from the C4 counties and a 2.44 from the Cowan counties. Going to the next slide, this is focusing more on those listening sessions or discovery sessions we had in phase 3. We tried to group the counties in both size and mixing C4 with CalWIN, because a lot of these conversations end up with dialogue between the counties, and we just kind of sit back and allow that to occur when it's appropriate. A lot of the times we'll hear, well, I don't know how to do this, and we don't even have to answer. Another county will chime in and provide that answer for them. So we group the counties together, and that allowed us to also have less voices, right? So when we have committee meetings, there are 100, 150, 200 people. When we have our biweekly meetings, sometimes it's around 300 at the biggest. So this allows smaller conversations and smaller dialogue of 15 to at most about 35, 40 people. These were 2-hour sessions over 4 weeks. It was a lot of condensed conversation. We were basically meeting every other day with a group of counties. In these sessions, we tried to make sure it wasn't just the counties and like technical staff, so there was policy and design. Karen's staff was in there to answer functional questions. The regional managers attended every single one. So it was great to be able to make sure that they were there to reinforce process, because that did come up as well. It wasn't all just questions about reports. The ad hoc team was in there because we did cover that as a topic, and they were able to come in and either answer questions or say, hey, email me and I'll get you back to that answer. There was a lot of interesting dialogue there because there's a ton of ad hoc documentation available to you, and it kept coming up in each session, well, why don't you guys have training materials, and we could provide the link to the training materials. So it was a really good exercise from that perspective. And then, of course, we had Accenture and the ClearBest team in there, too, to hear these conversations and figure out the recommendations. Let's go to next page. These are some of the actions we have in flight right now or we've already done. So we do have the biweekly state and fiscal meeting. This is every other week right now, 90 minutes long. We extended it from 60 to 90. They immediately take all of those 90 minutes. We usually go 15 to 20 minutes over. So I'm thinking at this point we might as well make it 2 hours. But that has continued to provide a lot of value for the counties. We still end up with questions in chat that we haven't got to, so we follow that back up through the biweekly communication. We've also started, I think I called them here to deep dive, but we also call them targeted sessions. We have the 237 one I mentioned during the risks. We have fiscal reporting coming up next Thursday where we will cover that. So every Thursday we're either doing the deep dives or targeted sessions, or we're having the biweekly state and fiscal sessions. Again, I talked about LA reports, the management reports committee I talked about. We're doing a lot of training with our Tier 3 team. That's up here at the project level. We're doing a lot with trying to get this concept out of their heads of, and I'll tell you, I was guilty of this when I answered tickets of, we tend to do a very big focus on, is this right or is this wrong? And then is it a defect or is it not? And that needs to switch in our heads from yes or no, it's right or wrong, to, well, this is yes or no, what it's doing, and this is why, and provide that functional knowledge. Like, what is the report doing? Why did or did it not count that? And if it is not what that user expected, go to the next step. Is there another report that's out there that might provide that information for them? We tend to stop at that initial, is it right or is it wrong? And so I think refocusing these guys' efforts on putting yourself in their shoes, just because they ask that question doesn't mean that's necessarily where the question stops. Sometimes it's I don't think this should be here, they submit the ticket, but what they're really asking is, I need a report that does, I don't know, REs. What is out there? I just happen to look at this one. And that's an ongoing dialogue. We're having that about every other week with the team right now. And there's various documentation efforts. The fiscal claiming guide was a good tool that we put together that helps the counties understand the fiscal processes. And then there's that CIT, that third bullet there, that again is about ad hoc. We continue to advertise that. There's a ton of documentation and support out there for ad hoc by the consortium team. So if anyone is in need, that would be the CIT to pull up. On the right side, over stuff that's in process, we are working on expanding our online help. This has become a tool where counties go to find out what's out there, which was an interesting revelation to us too, is it's a reflection on the pages of our system that they have to use basically a spreadsheet to figure out what's out there. So that's helped us a lot with reflecting on the usability of our pages. Like, why aren't the pages allowing them to search for these things? Why do they have to keep going to this list in online help? But we're looking on making that list in the online help more meaningful. Instead of a short description and here's how you navigate there, let's put the columns that are available. What are the data points available? What types of users are there? And this is something that San Bernardino has already kind of piloted and worked for them. So we're looking towards expanding that on our side as well. There's a reconciliation guide, which is actually something Jarek and his team have a draft of that they're working on. So that's going to be able to allow that to come a lot quicker than what we were originally thinking. And then there's the biggest desire of report documentation, and we're currently working through that on a Gen AI approach where it would look through the code, look through the policy, look through the SDRs, and develop a document that's usable by the county to understand what's going on in that report. Right now, there's an initial phase that's focused on the ad hoc community. I think that will actually be coming out in about 3 weeks or so, but it is very technical in nature. So if you can't read code or you don't know the database layer, not super helpful. If you're an ad hoc person, it's a godsend. So it'll be very meaningful when you see that in a few weeks, if you're the right group. System changes, we are going through an initial investigation on how to reintroduce subscriptions. This is something the C4 counties had prior to CalSAWS. This was in a way to take the report, pre-establish all my filters and settings, and then have a link emailed to me with the generated report available. So you didn't have to go into the system, find the report, open the report, and either use your bookmark or set the filters, then wait for it to render. It was something that we had developed years ago based on feedback from the C4 counties that were using other vendors and other tools that we had introduced that. Let's go to the next slide. So this is, we're going to get into some of the actual high-level concepts that we pulled out versus specific feedback or themes. So the first key takeaway is that, I think this is the most obvious one. The counties are having difficulty, and that difficulty goes back to there wasn't training or education prior to, which makes them rely on documentation, which isn't there. And I think that's the most obvious key takeaway from everything we've heard in all of our conversations, both at this level and at the detailed level. The next one here, key takeaway number 2, and this is where this one's, don't click them, there you go. But we have found a reporting difference between CalWIN and CalSAWS. And this is causing a little bit of struggle within the CalWIN counties. So if we do our first click here, and this may seem very obvious to some folks, but the way CalSAWS works is I have to produce a report of some format. So I count data, right? I count the number of applications, the number of activities, issuance amounts, what have you, and I produce a report. And in this example, I think it's the 237 that I put up there. We also produce a backup to that. So if I say I counted 57 applications, the backup will say, here's all 57 I counted, right? It won't show me anything else but the 57 I counted in that cell, okay? If we click one more time, we have seen a difference with CalWIN. There's still that counted, not counted difference, and they still produce the report, but they get an extract or a data set that goes along with that. That data set's going to have more than just what I counted. They will be able to go in there and say, take all my applications and give me just those that occurred in this month for this program, and there may be other stuff in that data set. So what the counties do, and this is kind of what I was trying to demonstrate on the top right icon there, is they apply their logic per county in a different way. They may just put it in Excel and do filters. They may upload it into a schema and apply some analytics tools. But each county is doing that uniquely. The reason we bring this up, and this was one of our aha moments, was when we got the feedback, well, even if you provided the most robust, detailed, wonderful documentation in the world, if you don't tell me what I did not count, I'm still going to struggle with validating that report. So this leads into the next thing here of where we've been going is purpose-built data sets in the data lake, right? This data set is going to have everything you need for this subject area. It's not going to include things that aren't that subject area. So the directional path forward with the lake is going to be only focusing on those specific purposes. So there's a definite clash of give me everything and that you did or did not count with purpose-built data sets and the concept of the lake moving forward. Key takeaway number 3, and again, this was another aha that we didn't see coming. There were issues prior to migration. We just didn't know about them. So engaging with the C4 counties, and they would hear something from CalWIN, And they would find out, well, yeah, it's been that way for 6 or 7 years. It was that way in C4. And we go, well, that's interesting. Well, we had been saying the reports are good and they're working and they're functional and Calwin should be good to go because we hadn't heard any sort of negative feedback or open tickets or defects or SCRs. So this was one of our other aha moments when one of the counties would say, well, how do you do this? And the C4 county would say, well, I take the report and I pull this off 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 and suddenly now I've got my answer. And so this is where there's a unstated, we have some work to catch up on. And I think that's a lot of what has come out of this is not just we need to reinvigorate our processes, but by having those new eyes come in, they basically identified for us that there's a backlog of work we need to do. Next slide here, and I feel like I'm talking a lot. I'm trying to go real fast. John, I'm sorry. Okay. So these are more of specifics that we heard versus higher arching aha moments. Obviously, detailed documentation does not exist. Training materials, there are a few courses. What they basically show you is how to navigate the tools. They don't get into, here's how a report works, here's the logic behind the report, here's how you validate the report. That is not in there. It's more superficial, kind of high-level usability concepts. Ad hoc training, this first bullet's probably the biggest one here, is we struggle with penetrating that into the county. It seems like at the onset of each conversation, we're re-advertising that this exists. We re-referenced the CIT from back in November of last year. So anything, you know, this group could do to help us to reinforce, hey, use the tools and the communications that are out there. I know we have customer engagement going out and doing a roadshow on a lot of communications and processes, and that will be another vehicle we're using to try and make sure that these things penetrate better. We've talked about bringing more functional support in here. We continue to see some confusion around the different solutions. There's a lot of investment in Apex. There's some other click tools that are coming. There's an ability called Click Sheets where you can basically take the report and then alter what it's showing you within the purpose-built data set, again, but you can make it do a graph instead of a bar chart or different columns and tables as long as it's part of that purpose-built data set. There's also Click Developer, which will be one of our recommendations we're going to show towards the end here. That is a lower technical solution to do ad hoc. So a lot of the feedback we've received is, I'm an eligibility worker, I'm not a SQL developer. Your tool requires high-level technical knowledge, or I have to wait on some support structure to do it for me. This Click Developer tool that's very early in the phases right now will allow you to do more of a point-and-click build of a report. You can also add in other data sets to it. It's actually a quite fascinating tool if you're in this kind of analytics world. Then let's move down to the bottom left, counties not utilizing service desk. So we spent a lot of time in the conversation trying to explore this because we actually found service desk usage higher in the Calwin counties than the C4 counties, at least for reports. So some of the responses we kept hearing, again, it's focus on defect or not defect, and we need to retrain our staff to do a different approach to that. We hear a lot of tickets closed before resolution has occurred. And I think initially most of us hear this and we go, well, that's because they're closing the ticket before I responded. Well, I'm sure that occurs. I don't think that's actually the key issue. What we have found is often responses are going into the case instead of the incident, which that's a simple training issue. We can fix that, and we already have started to. The other thing we have heard is that it's probably more communication back and forth between the person trying to respond to it and the person who's got the issue. I don't think that they're talking at the same level. So we need to have a better dialogue from the Tier 3 side of explaining what's going on. Because the ticket's being closed, if I've answered your question, but the person doesn't understand the answer. Again, Don, I don't think it's anything to do with your staff. I mean, maybe there's some in there, but it's not that. We have ran into times where they're not using tickets, either because they email Claudia, Gloria, myself, Tao, Ravneet, somebody. We are trying to reinvigorate, hey, if you email me, log me a ticket as well. Or I need the incident number to be able to provide you an answer. The other side is we have continuously run into pockets of people who don't know how to submit tickets. So, this is also something customer engagement, the RMs, and even the counties can help us with, is making sure everyone knows how to go through that process. And the last, I think, is a great point that you don't really get until you have the conversation, is if you guys don't have documentation, how do I know if it's an actual defect, right? I feel like it's wrong. I feel like that might not be the right thing, but if I don't have documentation, I don't necessarily feel comfortable submitting a ticket saying, take your time to research this. Usability concerns, I've touched on this a little bit already. This is the top right. We need to go back and do some more usability-based design on that. We need to engage with the counties. A lot of good feedback has come in there. I personally designed some of these pages 20 years ago, and I wish I would have had this feedback 20 years ago. So really good feedback we've got there. I think there's some stuff in Click we can do a little better. We have found that the filters on most of the reports are based on what is in the data set. So if I'm looking for, I don't know, warrants, if there's no warrants in the data set, I can't filter for it. And I think that's causing some confusion for the counties too. It's like the value I'm looking for isn't there. We've also found that, like, if you choose an office, it's only going to allow you units in that office. If you click a unit not in that office, it gets rid of office. So there's some interesting way in which Click applies filtering that we need to relook at and perhaps change reports. I've talked about LA reports. Last bottom right there, we have had a lot of feedback around some of our project processes. CERs take months to respond to sometimes. I've logged an information request ticket that goes into a queue, and it sits there for 6, 8, 9, 10 weeks before there's a response. So we've been working with Gloria and her staff, Claudia and Dennis, to figure out ways that we can expedite that process and see how we can get that information either coming in through a different channel or responding to them in a more timely fashion. Going to the next slide. This is where I'm going to start to get into some of our draft recommendations. This is the easiest one. Keep doing what you're doing that's working, right? Having all of this constant dialogue, constant communication is definitely helping. We know it's a bit of an organic process instead of having it all ready and trained and everything before go live, but it is helping the counties proceed forward to have this constant dialogue. What I want to move a little bit more towards is the next few slides where we get into some specifics, and I'm going to just highlight a few of these. Subscription functionality I talked about, but we also want to pair that with something we're calling notifications already. We've heard feedback from the counties of, you rerun my report and I don't necessarily know that you did. Or sometimes you reran it and I just happened to notice because I looked at the top left of the report where it says run date. So we want to add an ability into the system that pairs with subscription that basically says, notify me, send me an email, put an alert, put it in the message center every time you rerun this report. And that's going to help a lot with, even if I fail all my communication processes when I execute this, the system will still tell you. The other one is consolidate and reduce reports, and this has been a lot of our feedback, particularly on the fiscal side of reports. If you like opening spreadsheets, I've got the right solution for you on fiscal. We tend to produce one for each aid code, where the state over the years has taken the automated assistance claim and pushed like aid codes together. So we need to follow that same methodology and start consolidating the reports back together like we've seen the state do over the years. That will be a huge win and make the counties much happier. Next slide. Documentation. Of course, we need to continue to move forward with Gen AI. I think it's going in a good direction so far, but we need to make sure that we have the right requirements for that going forward. So one of the things we want to use the bi-weekly meeting for is to gather those requirements. What do you want to see in this documentation and have that ready to go before we start phase 2 of this approach. Bottom left, this is a lot of the feedback we've actually seen from the RMs is we'd like a roadmap or guide to where is ad hoc going. We've seen the tools change. We've seen new tools come out. We know that there's changes to the application occurring in the next few years. What is that roadmap for ad hoc solutioning going forward? What are the timelines for that? Do we not know? Do we know what the steps are? Something needs to come out and provide that communication to not just the ad hoc group, but we think everybody across the board. On the consortium side here, again, I talked about ServiceNow and CER deadlines. We've talked a lot about the project recently with KPIs and how we make sure we're managing the project correctly. That's a lot of the feedback we've seen too. as well as establishing rules for county-specific reporting requirements. A lot of what we're getting in our conversations is, I need A, B, and C. No one else needs A, B, and C. For example, today, maybe it was yesterday, it was Thursday, we had a long conversation about tax intercept and how a county needed this tax intercept information for an annual certification. A lot of conversation goes by, and what we find out is that it's that county's process on how they do their certification. It's not required by policy, it's not required by tax intercept or anyone else, it's just the way that they do that. So what are our guidelines? Would I automate that for that one county, or is this something where ad hoc comes into play? Where are those lines drawn? So establishing those guidelines is a pretty meaningful point for us. And then on the county side, you know, please help with the service desk tickets. This is where if I could ask everybody for one thing today, if someone comes to you with something, have you logged a ticket? Because that is where we have all of our information stored. It's where other counties go to see if this problem has been encountered and hasn't been resolved. That's a very common thing. Well, I didn't have to log a ticket because I already looked at service now, and I saw this already addressed 3 times, so I knew what to do. Last slide is our next steps. So we'll complete all of the feedback that we've been getting. We've been going back listening to the recordings, and then start to finalize these recommendations. I actually just shared with John earlier this week all the reviews we got to go through the next couple of weeks to get all of us on the same page and make sure that this is the right direction for all of us involved. And then we will bring that report back to this group to make sure, as well as PSC and everyone else involved, to make sure that this is what we need and what we have forward, and make sure that we're prioritizing the right things. And if not, let's get focus and effort on those items. I think that might be the longest I've ever spoken here. So.
Thanks, Sean. And I'm happy to continue to close things out with also the OCM support behind some of the next steps too. So as mentioned earlier, we will be extending our support for OCM for the Calhoun counties, really focusing on what Sean mentioned earlier, coming out of the survey around increasing Calhoun County levels of comfort as they spend more time in reports and in SAWs, and then also just making sure that there's that wraparound level of support for the counties as they are working in reports and discovering questions and items that require some additional communications and change management. There are 3 areas that we're focusing on that I mentioned earlier. The first of which is looking at the change management and learning aspect of things. For that, over the past week, we've onboarded with Sean's team, so we're closely integrated on working on the learning aspect. There's 3 things I wanted to highlight there. The first is we have drafted a CIT, which hopefully will create a baseline. It'll be sent out to all of the counties, but really it's a summary of all of the various resources as well as the work groups around reports. We have found in the counties that we are supporting that there is some help needed just to navigate the various work groups and resources. And so we wanted to send that CIT right out the gate, and that will be going out for review very soon. The second piece is we have, through our separate services support of San Mateo and San Francisco County, a number of Deloitte-created items around reports that we're currently working with the QA and also with the reports team to assess fitness for rolling out more broadly as a support tool and resource. Included in that is, of course, a couple of documentations around crosswalks between Calhoun and CalSAWS reports. So that's what Sean mentioned we'll be reviewing for fitness to include in an overall reconciliation guide that may be helpful to the counties. And the third piece is we're now integrated in all of the report-related work groups and meetings. We are there really to create that cycle of learning. In those reports meetings, of course, we're hearing of resolutions to tickets, as well as just items that are potential learning and training items. So we are focused on highlighting those things and making sure that that information is shared across, especially Calhoun counties who are newer to the reports module. The second piece of what we're supporting is around communications. So we've gotten started with this, and the goal of that support is really to create broader awareness of resources. And also we are going to be engaging with RMs just to socialize our role and work with Calhoun counties to share information, as well as target what are some of the common issues that can be prioritized as we head into the various work groups and meetings. And finally, we mentioned earlier, Sean mentioned around the ticketing process. A big part of our support will be focused, because we have folks on the ground in Calhoun counties, to follow up on collecting additional data points that will assist in the triage and the ticketing process as well. And of course, supporting the communications so that there's broader awareness of the key issues that have been escalated, as well as the resolutions. So Sean, I think those are the pieces that I wanted to present. Happy to open up for questions, and back to you, John, as well.
Yeah, and just, I just want to, thank you all for going through that. That was fairly detailed, took a while to be able to do, but I hope you see that from the directors, your fiscal managers, your admin managers, and executives, we've heard you. We know that you guys have been struggling. And unfortunately, this isn't one of those easy things to get your arms around. It takes hard work, and it's going to be a progressive type of engagement model that's going to get us to a better state. And you can see from this plan how we're moving forward. So we wanted to give you a pretty robust update that we've heard the counties, we've heard the struggles that you're having. We have a strategy to be able to do that. It's taking a little bit of time, but this is one of our top priorities. To be able to do that, and your folks have to engage with us to be able to do that, and they are doing that. So we'll keep working through it. Michael, with that, back to you.
Okay, thanks, John. I want to keep encouraging the team to keep a focus on this, because this is incredibly important. I'm really happy to see a concentration on reports, because the counties, you guys know this, the counties are driven by data and reporting, and that's how we operate. So it's incredibly important for us to really dig and get behind this, and more important for what our next steps are going to be as we are learning from this. What are we going to do about each one of these areas? And having some tangible things for the directors to latch onto will be really important in future meetings. So appreciate the update, and I look forward to furtherance of moving into what are the next steps and what's coming from it, so that the directors know what to expect. Absent that, I'll go ahead and open it up for any of our board members or our state partners to comment or ask questions on this particular topic.
Hey, Michael, this is Ethan in Sacramento. I'm vaguely recalling that the data lake was a separate service and maybe a separate cost. Can we confirm that? And I'm only asking because if all the information starts to go into a data lake, the directors, all we need to be able to prepare is we're going into our budgets to be able to make those asks. It might be old information, but for some reason it feels like it's, I don't recall 100%.
So your reports today, except for a very few handful, are all pulling out of the lake already. But there is an ad hoc solution that you could choose to go to where you basically marry your lake into our lake. And right now I think San Diego's gone down that path, and they're integrating a lot of other data sources to produce one combined report with CalSAWS. The direction, Ethan, that we're going does not require additional separate services for you to be able to do that. If there are things above and beyond that you're doing on adding different data sets and doing things, then there are different levels of support that require additional support and a county purchase on top of that. We can clarify those things and make sure that they get out, but our base solution does not require an additional county purchase. No, and that's part of the roadmap, though, is if we get to a point where you can't query the transactional where you've been with Apex, then what is that roadmap to solve that for you? And even in the initial conversations we've had, someone would be doing that transition for you. You wouldn't be forced to rewrite everything you've done, and that's something Laura and her team are already working on, putting that scope together. What would that be?
Yeah, Sean, this is Laura, and John, if I could just add that For those counties that have reached out and are interested in paying for that additional reporting environment, if you will, for ad hoc, it's typically with the thoughts that they want to get rid of or eliminate some of their on-premise data warehousing solutions, and it might be a good fit for that county. So if that's helpful, that's some of the background and information that we've been sharing, and happy to set something up with Sacramento County if you'd like some more information about that.
So John, I think it might be helpful for all the directors, maybe they can get some kind of a primer or something that explains what is included and what CalSAW's core is going to be providing from a reporting standpoint, because it's robust. It's not that it's going to be a very minimal environment. And then what might be open to counties that they could use purchase dollars to add, say, IHSS data or some other data components to it, if that's what they choose to do. Maybe we can be clearer about that in some kind of a document that can be shared with directors.
Definitely, and we can put that on the agenda for a future meeting. Yep. And get that out to the counties more broadly instead of just the PSC or JPA as well.
Thank you, John. Any other questions or comments on this particular topic?
This is Kristen. Yeah, this is Marla. I had a couple comments on it. So great presentation. Thanks so much. And not just great presentation, but great process. I think this is really established what we need to really make sure the reports are meeting all of our needs as counties. So thank you very much. Really appreciate that. The issue about the CARs are there's a slow response. I know where that comes from. That comes from the director saying, I need something right now. And that's because our board says, I need something right now. And I will say, since we've gone to CalSAWS, I have quite a few times gone to the board with not the data I wanted. Sort of what I would consider kind of substandard data, just because we couldn't figure out how to get it. And so I think that is where that pressure comes from, is the pressure that we're getting as a department to talk about what we do for the community. The second thing I'd like to just say is I think that this needs to be a really long-term investment for us as CalSAWS. Reporting and operations are completely iterative, right? The reports inform how we do our operations, how we do our operations gives us better reports, so that's completely iterative. And I think that we, from what I'm seeing, and I'm just in one county, but from what I'm seeing, I feel like the reports are still kind of gross, if you will, kind of very big, and there's a lot more we can do to get very nuanced information. A lot of times it's like this, and then just these very, just very nuanced, which really gives us a lot more understanding about what's happening and how we can change our operations to get better outcomes for our community and for ourselves. And then the last thing is, I think we get all these reports going well. I think the next step that I'm looking at is a lot of this reporting is point in time reporting. Here's your report for this month, here's your report for this month. And what I want to see in CalSAWS also is these dashboards that have trended data, and so that, take, like what we do in counties is we have all these reports, and we might have 50 reports, and we take one data point from each of those 50 reports that goes into this trended dashboard, so that we can quickly see over time. Because 1 month of data is interesting, but unless you can see that compared to a trend, you have no idea if that's something to be concerned about. So I hope that we're headed towards, eventually having these really good trended dashboards easily available too.
I think the way we talk about that in the group is moving from counting to analyzing and predicting, right, versus just counting, which is kind of where we are at this stage.
Okay, thank you, Marla. I think Kristen was coming in.
Yes, thanks, Michael. I just wanted to ask a question, Sean, a little bit about the process. I mean, we're talking a lot about reporting as a whole, and a lot of it sounded like feedback from the management perspective, right? How you can be mindful of what's still pending, what's been completed, kind of those types of things. But I was curious if the group also touched upon individual productivity, unit productivity, and if those types of reporting features, both at the individual team member level as well as at the whole level, were discussed.
So it's a complicated answer, but did we talk about it? Yes. It's interesting when you get into that productivity or assessment of effectiveness kind of reporting. And there's some definitely in there for Los Angeles where they were able to implement during the LRS phase very specific things that match their needs and expectations. And we do have them in other places, but that's part of where we get into, one of the recommendations was county-specific expectations. So when we've engaged in this topic over the years, it's been very difficult to get the counties to agree to the same stats or measurements of them. Now, I think years have gone by and we've moved into task-based workloads predominantly across the board, except for perhaps our smallest counties. So maybe we can revisit that conversation because it hasn't happened recently. But I would say we talked a lot about it, but I would say that I would not give a lot of examples of that out of the system because the conversations we've had historically where we could not get consensus across the counties. I remember sitting in the Rancho Cordova office for 3 days, and at the end we decided we're not going to do it. But I think now that we've moved to a task-based world, we're post-pandemic, maybe it's a time to reintroduce that topic as a direction.
And Kristen, I think this effort has been really an effort to make sure that we level set. We get everybody understanding the reports, fixing where we need to the reports, getting everybody functional on the reports that we have. That doesn't mean that we don't need different reports to be able to measure different things, but the focus of this was really to try to make what we have functional, documented, but that's probably the next phase that we need to look to as a strategic initiative going forward is, okay, now that we're on a positive path in that direction, is there reporting needs that need to look at productivity and trends and those types of things? And I don't think that that is a bottom-up. I think that's sort of a top-down view of that, and we would really need to get some director, chief deputies, deputy directors' view on that to say, how do we go about that, give you the flexibility you need, because we know that's individual to each one of the counties as we go forward, but be able to make available the data sets where you can call those things out. But that would be an investment that we have not set aside as of yet to be able to do that. And it would be something that the board or project steering committee going forward would have to compare that to other things we have on our plate and see if that is a priority.
Thank you, John. I appreciate that. I think I misunderstood the purpose of this being as foundational as it really is. So I appreciate that clarification. And I echo what Marla was saying earlier too, and kind of add, I think as we get to those phases, it's critical that we be able to have the ability to bifurcate the sorting for the reports or what have you, regardless of if it's at the individual or larger level, to look at both the case and the task, right? Be able to kind of separate and query those in both types of manners. But okay, I fully understand now. Thank you.
I'd like to mention, first off, thanks for all the information on all the efforts being done. Definitely as we get further from the transition for the counties. And you referenced the LA County wanting reports and the other counties wanting those. And, can't help but notice that LA has the highest satisfaction rating with the report. What makes those reports so desirable? And, when you talk about getting counties to agree, that's a jumping off point. And what's the challenge to getting counties those reports?
Well, I'll start off with a lot of the counties right now, I think particularly around GAGR, right, there wasn't a lot of reporting included in that they need something. And frankly, they actually haven't seen the LA reports. What they've seen is a title and a short description. So this is part of where we're trying to be careful of, well, let's look at it first. Let's not just replicate it for everybody. Let's look at it first. And if that doesn't solve your problem, then it's not going to help you. Like if it's a GR time limits report, time limits varies wildly across the counties, right? So just replicating that may mean nothing for your county because I do it entirely differently. Or it may pull in rep or something like that, which is LA specific, or dependent on an LA County interface that no one else has because it's only meeting with their there's a deathmatch interface in LA that's only people who died within LA County, right? And that helps pull them off aid much faster than going through the EVES process, right? So we have to analyze that. So first step is, does that actually mean anything to anybody else? Second of all, can I replicate that? Third, if I can replicate it, what's the level of effort? Some of these are going to be so simple as just change the county code, right? And they're just going to roll right through. And then it's just a matter of scheduling it. Some are going to be, I need to add some codes table values for you, but then it'll work. Others are going to be, I can't. You don't have that interface, or you don't follow GRC. But I do think the reason why there's an advantage there is because there was a point in time where they were able to build a lot of unique functionality for them, which is why I keep reinforcing, like, we need to have some sort of model, like, where do we go as a statewide system with some of this stuff?
Sean, I know that was one of the takeaways we had out of our annual conference down in San Diego, was to go back and take a look at that. That was one of the aha moments. I know that your team is diving into it. Just for the director's purposes, you know, where do we look like where we're at in terms of making those assessments, so that way the directors will know some things that might be coming back to them that are useful. Maybe that could be where we could go, and then we can move this along a little bit.
Okay. So right now we're in that phase. We haven't replicated anything yet. What we've done is we've provided the counties more details about those reports, and they're going through and saying, these are the ones I'm interested in now that they have more information than just a title and a subject or a single sentence. So that's where we are in that phase right now. What we'd be looking at is, I think it's next biweekly meeting, we should be getting that feedback back. So 2 weeks from now, then we'd start iterating through. Let's pick the top 3 most common that everybody said, and then start iterating through them and seeing what's available. So the actual seeing what's going to come out of that will still be in a few weeks.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. I was in that.
Right.
All right. Any other comments, questions from our board member, state partners? Okay. Any public comment? Oh, did we get another one, John? In the room? I don't want to ignore the room. Okay, any public comment? Okay, hearing none, then I believe we're good with that one. Thank you very much. Very thorough conversation. And that should lead us into the release and policy updates communication.
I just have to do a quick time check, John. How long do I have? Short. Be quick.
Just go through it.
All right.
Tighten up a little bit, that would be great.
So, yes, it'd be nice to go a little quicker.
Okay, you're done.
I'm done. Any questions? So something seems weird in my update, right? We have no formal CCU update today. However, I have 3 quick updates that I thought of for you, and I wrote them down because last time I had 3, I forgot the last one. One, we did hit a milestone this month. Last week, we ran the ex parte process for our Magi Medi-Cal population for the 12th month, the final month of our unwinding. So that was a milestone. We also just ran the stable income waiver for our non-Magi population, as well as generate the renewal packets, and they are currently with Dawn at Central Print, ready to get printed and mailed out. So not a day goes by that I haven't thought about CCU in the last 12, 16 months, so I wanted to give a quick shout out there. Number 2, MEDL 2409 came out end of last week. That continues that second reminder notice for our households that receive that renewal packet, and that continues it indefinitely at this point, as well as there was an extension of a couple of waivers through the end of the year. And then point number 3, and I do have to look at that real quick. I got looped into a couple of conversations, and I see Justin right there earlier this week. I know that outstanding renewals is a topic for the counties, and working with DHCS and CWDA. So I did get looped into a communication that went out to a subset of counties around the outstanding renewals. So we're pulling together a quick little overview, and I think I've pressure tested it with a couple of counties now, San Bernardino and Sonoma County, just to give folks a background on where did these numbers come from. I always like to say, well, where did they come from? When was the report run? So we're putting together a little fact sheet for folks so they can understand the numbers that were provided to them and how you can find those numbers. And again, they've changed since they were run because we continue to progress Medicare renewals every day. So from a release perspective, it is our bi-monthly release month. Last week we had 2 webcasts, in fact, for our 2403 release. We had our regular release webcast with about 20 or so items that were demonstrated for the counties, and then last Wednesday we had a specific webcast on the EBT 2259, CS303, and the automation that is coming around skimming and scamming. And this is a combined change that is going in both Benefits Cal and CalSource. We know that you received these forms today. Folks may come into the office with this policy change. It is providing customers an opportunity to submit this information through Benefits Cal. So we've built out APIs to pull in that information and display it on pages for workers. It was a very lively webcast. How about that? To beat Sean, we had over 800 people dialed in. It's very challenging running a webcast with 800 people. So I know Karen and the team, the facilitators, definitely taking best practices back from that, because we know as we continue to move forward, they're very well-attended webcasts for our releases. We do recognize there's some opportunities there to enhance the communication. For one, please don't turn your video on if there's 800 people. But what we ended up doing is re-recorded the demonstrations as well as sent out the Q&As and a fact sheet or overview of the Benefits Cal flow. So that was sent out, I believe, just a couple of earlier this week. And so there was every attempt made to answer all the Q&A that came in. I think there was over 100 questions, and as you can imagine, with that many people, a lot of aggregation of questions, same questions. So this is a stepping stone for this particular change. Karen has a work group, a county work group on this. We do anticipate more changes as we move forward. And so we welcome county's feedback. We know this, having these submitted electronically will be a difference. And we look forward to making any refinements as we move forward and suggestions for improvement there from an automation perspective. Other quick updates, we did run the FPL COLA earlier this month. We also are supporting San Diego County, who's administering disaster CalFresh for those individuals who are impacted by the storms. We all enjoyed the conference and sunny days, but earlier that week in San Diego, back in January, they had some extreme weather and flooding that impacted many of the households in San Diego County. And hot off the press, I think at 2:05, we got a heads up from CDSS that disaster CalFresh application period is being extended. It was supposed to end today, so we had pre-staged a change that we're currently testing to get in tonight to extend it through next weekend. They're the quick highlights. We obviously have many releases coming, and we can cover them next time. If we go to the next page, I also want to cover the CalFresh mass replacement. So we did have many counties that have been impacted by the winter storms. So I have 2 groupings here. The first group is our February mass replacement. We did run that at the beginning of March. 27 counties impacted. So some statistics there and information was shared with the counties. We also just received this earlier this week, another request from CDSS for information. So this is for counties impacted by the March storm. So you see the list of counties there. This will, as more information comes in, we'll continue to evolve this and support the counties and CDSS in getting these benefits out to households once they are approved by. So February is done. Moving on to March, there may be others. Okay, next slide. Quick reminder, we talked about this at PSC JPA last week, the 40 counties, so LA and the former C4 counties, we are going through a case removal process. Counties are in review. We just published the latest monthly report that came out, I think it's CIT 0038. and counties have the opportunity to go through and review those case lists and flag any that they want to exclude from the removal process. Again, the process is scheduled to run the beginning of May. Next slide. I just want to take a couple of minutes now. This is really an awareness item. As we turn the corner from migration into 2024, we have a number of large projects that we're going to start to bring to you all. Today, we'll talk a little bit about CARES. We have CFAP, which I know many of you are aware of, as well as WIDTIP replacement. So just today, from a CARES CalSource integration perspective, we are working with OTSI, the CARES project, to work through some real-time integration. So when that system goes live, it will be connected with CalSource through a series of APIs, and there are all the colors there in the middle. We do have a large number of APIs that we're currently working through with the CARES system that will allow data transmission between CARES and CalSource. Next slide. This is a development timeline. I just want to be clear, this is not the official CARES project timeline. They have very detailed timeline. What we just tried to show you here from a automation and development perspective, again, we started in Q4 of calendar year 2023. We are currently working through some high-level phases, include design, build, integration test. So again, we pretty much have daily meetings at this point with the CARES and OTSI teams, working through the data integration, the data elements that go with that data integration. We are working, the bottom swim lane there is just our development approach. We're iterating through the various APIs and refining them as we go. There is a CalSource work group comprised of your counties and your staff that meets every 2 weeks. So they are reviewing all the designs and prototypes as we work through this project effort. So where we intend to be by the end of the calendar year is having built all the integrations and gone through system test. We are actually starting that system test planning, and QA vendor here, ClearBest, is participating. We are working on a joint system test plan across the systems that will go end to end. And so that's going to be worked on for the next month or two to get agreement there before we head into system test. And then there's more to come on this plan. There's elongated user acceptance test, and then moving on, there's potentially a pilot before the go live, but that's all more to come, and it's not part of this schedule yet, but it is out there, and I know in the master CARES schedule there's more information there. But just wanted to really focus in on this current year. Next slide. So right now we have identified about 17 data integration points, or APIs. We'll exchange data. On the left-hand side there, you'll see current status of where we're at. We do have all of them making their way through the process. We already have 3 in integration test and some sample screens there. So, as this information comes into CalSource and there's case linking, workers, foster care workers, will be able to go in and see the information that we received from the system. And it's going to include things like case linking, placement authority, documents, images. So with each of these APIs, we're also looking at how do we present that information to workers and work with the work group to make sure that it meets with the business. I think that was my last slide that I breezed through very quickly. A lot of work to come on this one and in process already.
Back to you, Michael.
Okay, well, that was the fastest, Lisa, I think, that we've covered your area because it's such a substantial area every time. Nicely done. I want to open it up. Any other comments, questions from our board member state partners on this presentation topic? Nailed it. All right, any public comment? All right, excellent. We'll go ahead and move on. I think we have Benefits Cal coming up next.
Good afternoon. Okay. I'll go ahead and kick it off, and I know Owner will be right there behind me, and he'll finish up with all the release note and highlights and all of those. So for the ROI work group, As I mentioned earlier during our risk conversation, we are still meeting. Our most recent meeting was just about 2 weeks ago. Our next meeting is this coming Monday. Again, like I've mentioned several times, the policy is definitely moving along. Both DHCS and CDSS continue to collaborate on that. Part of our discussion on Monday will be looking at where they see this moving forward and some of the approaches on it, so that we can start getting that information out to everybody involved, so that we can start working on the steps of what will it take to operationalize it back at our home shops, whether it's for the counties or CBOs or the assisters. We'll start also discussing some of the impacts of those policy and operational items and what it might mean for automation. We don't know the scope yet for the automation, but that is definitely right there on the cusp to initiate those conversations compared to what we had before. And then we'll also be looking at more in depth some of the milestones now that we've got some clarifications. What kind of buckets might we start tracking to make the reporting out differently for you all and to see the progress. And with that, I'll turn it over to Owner.
Thank you, Lynn. Good afternoon, everyone. So in order to keep on time, I will go through the key highlights briefly as much as I can. Then I will be happy to answer any questions, get into details on any topic. Following the release of information workgroup highlights, we will continue with we wanted to update our JPA board with the key system updates briefly, for recent improvements and system improvements we deployed. So on this slide, what you see is an overview of the items delivered recently in February and what is coming up this month in March and next 2 months. Just for the key highlights, this month in February, last month in February, now we are in March. The key highlight is release 2402. We added a link for CalHOP in Benefits Cal under additional resources section, and Student Center, which is for mental health support for youth, young adults and families. And this month in the March release 2403, there are a couple highlights here. Both EBT 2259 and CF 303 forms are being digitized in Benefits Cal. With the EBT 2259, customers will be able to submit the EBT replacement claim form through Benefits Cal. And similarly for CF 303, customers will be able to digitally complete the form if they lost their CalFresh benefits due to a life situation. So both of these functionalities will be available targeted for the March release later this month. The third item you see here for the March release is about the time on aid for the CalWorks. And this is a collective change both in Benefits Cal and the CalSA systems. When we met last month in the February JPA meeting, we had shared a probable delay. And currently, further conversations are taking place across projects, including counties, CWD, and other agencies regarding the implementation timeline. I don't know, Lynn, if you want to chime in or add anything, but this is the latest update we have on this particular improvement.
Yes, so we know that there's some current conversations going on there, so we are delaying the implementation within Benefits Cal. We're setting a switch so that we can turn it on at a different time, and that timeline has not yet been determined. This has definitely been a real-time in progress type of item, so the slides were prepared ahead of time. So.
Thank you, Lynn. So moving on to April, with the release 2404, there is a new improvement coming up for the document upload functionality, which I will share more updates later. We have a separate section for that area, so I will cover that later. And we will be also adding an inline help text for customers from usability standpoint, to improve the usability for the doc upload functionality. So also, as Rachel mentioned earlier in the beginning of the meeting, we are currently working on enabling the case link functionality with additional security measures during the month of April with the April release. As we look forward in May, there is a collaboration model prioritized enhancements we are working on to add an inline help text for customers when the case linking doesn't automatically happen. And another important highlight I want to share is about this SSA, Assisted Apps feature, which is a new functionality requested through, we have been working with CDSS on this and the SSA. This functionality is on schedule for the May release with a flag, and SSA requested us to enable it in the month of September. So similar to other capabilities, we have a flag-based implementation. We will be turning it on when SSA requests us. If they prepone the date, we can enable it anytime they want. Next slide, please. So this is an awareness slide as we share every month. As we look forward, there is a series of items on the horizon. There's coming up from policy planning and GCF parity standpoint that we will be working on in the near future, including the items you see here, such as ABOT, CAPP, CFAP expansion, homeless assistance, and new pre-populated SAR-7. And from releases standpoint, we will continue to work on these areas that like doc upload, renewable SAR-7, application tracker, and overall customer dashboard in general to improve the user experience and make it more intuitive. Next slide, please. So similar to last month, we wanted to briefly update our JPA board on where we stand in terms of the usage and adoption from the applications, documents, and renewal standpoint in Benefiscal. During the month of February, the key highlights are we saw over 220,000 new applications submitted by the customers, over 2.4 million documents uploaded in February, and 55,000 renewals submitted. We also observed good volume of changes reported by the customers, and again over 58,000 periodic reports in the month of submitted in the month of February 2024. But in the big picture, since go live in 2021, we exceeded the 4 million applications mark by the for the applications submitted by the customers by end of February, and which is pretty exciting. We wanted to share that information with you as well. Next slide, please. And you may recall in the multiple JPA meetings we had previously, we have been periodically updating you for a number of areas that we have been tracking from the customer experience standpoint. And today I wanted to briefly update you on where we are for these top 3 areas, such as doc upload, case linking, and the document management. Starting with and I also want to share what has been implemented recently and items coming up on the horizon pretty soon. Starting with the document upload, based on the feedback we captured through the focus group sessions, UCD sessions.
You're muted, owner.
Oh, am I?
I can hear you. Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for confirming. So for the document upload standpoint, based on the feedback we captured.
Hey, Lynn, can you jump in? I think we're having a little bit of audio problems here in the room, at least.
Yeah, we can hear him online.
Yeah, I can hear him.
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear him.
All right.
Yeah, we do.
Okay.
Shall I
Let's
continue?
be here in the room then. Yeah, go ahead, owner.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so for the doc upload, we delivered 2 improvements in January release for document upload functionality to allow customers to see renewals and the periodic reports related documents on top in their dropdown to make it more intuitive and user-friendly for them if they're in their renewal period. And also, we have additional changes coming up next month in April, which we have been working with our advocate partners and our CBOs and the customers too. Where we will be enhancing the search feature, adding inline help text for each doc type with examples, and also aligning the document sequence with the help center to make it more intuitive, which would ultimately improve the customer experience. So this is coming up next month in April. As it relates to case linking, as Rachel mentioned earlier, during the security updates, case link feature has been disabled on Benefiscal temporarily, and we are working on enabling the functionality next month in April. Also targeting to make usability improvements with adding inline help text for customers in May as well. So, and also number of Benefiscal users that we also had an action item for the case linking. I want to address that action item here as we are speaking to that functionality. The action item was, what are the number of Benefiscal users that were using MFA prior to being mandatory whether or not any of these were compromised accounts. So that was a question in the previous meeting. And the number of customers using MFA prior to it being mandatory on February 15 was slightly more than 63,000 out of close to 3.8 million accounts, which corresponds to 1.7%. And for the second part of the question, currently there is no indication on any of these accounts being compromised. So, but we will keep you updated if this changes. I just wanted to address that action item as I'm covering that functional area. And in terms of the account creation and account management, similarly that was covered during the security updates earlier in the meeting, MFA has been enabled for the new and existing customers during the last month in February. And in March, we will be making a series of usability improvements for customers to make it more intuitive. Going forward, though, for collectively all these top areas, we will continue to monitor and gather inputs from counties, customers, CBOs, and the stakeholders through the UCD channels and keep you up to date. Next, I will be handing over to Chris to talk about the OCR optical character recognition updates.
Yeah. Thank you, Onur. Yes, so as Onur said, I'll be sharing a brief update on the optical character recognition or OCR enablement effort for Benefits Cal customer submissions. On the timeline you can see here, we have that as of March 4th, we went live with our 8 pilot counties. Those are Monterey, Orange, Placer, Riverside, Sacramento, San Francisco, Santa Cruz, and Yolo. We'll be collecting detailed statistics over the entirety of this month, but we want to share some early information today. As of today, we have processed roughly 120,000 documents through our OCR engine. Of those documents, we're seeing more than a 98% rate of them proceeding to task generation without additional worker intervention. Performance of the OCR engine has remained stable throughout the last 2 weeks, and it has been within our projected volumes. More importantly, we have received feedback from participating counties that queue volumes have remained consistent. This echoes what our project side monitoring is seeing as well. And then our Highland partner is also collecting additional details this month, and we'll be sharing that with this group next month. As we continue forward with this effort into next month, we're going to be kicking off our next round of communications with the remaining 50 counties. With a target full implementation date of May 20th. And that concludes my update today, so I'll pass it back.
Michael, this was the last slide for the benefits call section. I will be handing over to you for any questions from the audience.
Okay, Onur, thank you very much. Any comments or questions from our board members or our state partners on the Benefits Cal update? It was very thorough. Thank you. Any public comment? Okay, hearing none, I believe the next item up is CalSA's data archiving initiative, John.
Okay, good afternoon all. I'll provide a very brief update on the CalSA's data archive initiative. The proposed architecture for the data archival project was discussed at the January and February ad hoc work group meeting. And we plan to address if there is any additional questions or concerns from the counties in our upcoming meeting on March 21st. In the meantime, we had requested the counties to share the list of reports impacted by this change so that we can provide any additional support from the project. Also, we informed the counties that we are delaying the implementation of this initiative to the summer to allow more time for the ad hoc report developers to modify their reports and test the changes and be ready with their implementation. Also, we informed the counties that the consortium will modify any project developed Apex reports that are impacted with this implementation. In the meantime, several counties had, showed some interest in testing their modified reports in our test environment. So currently, like now we are working on to upgrade the environments to support their testing needs, because this testing is very data intensive, and we need better environment to do that testing. So we anticipate the environments will be ready for the testing by end of this month. At the same time, like now we are also planning to do a performance test on this particular change, so that we continue to meet the SLA requirement after we implement this change. Those are the updates I have, Michael.
So Michael, just to put a little bit of context on it, this was a action item from the board meeting last time. If you remember, we're archiving some data and only keeping 3 years online, then adding the history button. So if folks want beyond that 3 years, they hit the history button to be able to do that. I think the biggest concern was in regards to ad hoc reporting and having to go query the data from 2 different sources to be able to do that. So this is the steps that we've had to be able to communicate it with the user communities, provide them with training environments and a process so that there isn't that gap in ad hoc process. So as a follow-up from last month's meeting. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, so do we believe that this is going to be a problem in terms of being able to report across this data timeline then? I know we got instructions on how it'll be accomplished, but I didn't know how arduous that is.
Yeah, it does not seem like it should be a problem. That's why we're doing this enhanced communication, but it is going to take some changes and some effort for ad hocs that are needed prior to the 3 years where we have that data, because it is stored in another database to be able to initiate that query and merge that data. So there are some steps to be able to do that.
So that is why, like, Michael, like, we had requested all the counties to share their reports that is using this, data prior to 5 years time period. So if they provide the reports, like, the project team can provide an additional support so that, like, they will be ready with this change.
Are we able to validate with them that they're ready for the change before we actually decommission this and move this data off?
Yes, Michael, like, that is why, like, we are opening up our test environments for them, so that, like, they can actually test the changes to make sure, like, the data, what they are getting today, they are able to get it even after the implementation of this initiative.
Okay, thank you, Vivek. I just want a confirmation before it's moved away that it's working as intended by the counties and also the project. So thank you. I appreciate that coming back and confirming that. Okay, any other comments, questions from our board members, state partners on that item? Any public comment? Okay, moving on, we've got contact center update.
Thank you, Michael. Can you guys hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. So I'm going to start off with an update where in January, we did hit over 1 million calls, and also in February with the shortened month, we also hit a milestone of 1 million calls. And so we do continue to see a lot of calls handled each month by our contact center solution that is live with all the CalSAWS contact center counties. Next slide, please. Okay, so over the past month, we've worked with several counties and to do additional e-gain and Calabrio related trainings. We heard a lot of great feedback and around the both tools, so there's definitely increased confidence with both the e-gain and Calabrio coming out of the trainings. We've also shared some lessons learned with the counties at their monthly CSC support calls regarding some business process re-engineering and other optimizations that have resulted in reduced average answer time and reduced abandonment rates. These are some of the things that we've done over the past few weeks as part of our goal to continuously improve contact center operations for the counties. Next slide. To provide an update on both the welcome bot and the authentication bot, I want to share some recent metrics. So We have continually been improving the welcome and authentication bot, which has resulted in a significant uptick in the success rates as shown on the screen. This resulted in the week between February 28th and March 6th, 87,000 utterances were understood just through the English flow for the welcome bot. And then for the English flow for authentication bot, that was 224,000 authenticated customers were completed before reaching the agent, which ultimately does reduce handle time for the agent. All of the success rates are trending up, and so as we continue to deploy these to more counties and also deploy additional defect fixes, we are striving to improve on our success rates for both welcome bot and authentication bot. Next slide. So this is a recent update for RPA. RPA also continues to see success with 6 additional counties that actually just went live today. The overall success rate of the RPA for EBT card replacement has a success rate of 96%, and that's an aggregated success rate since launch with the first county. On the slide, you will see also that the remaining counties are also listed and have targeted dates, through March, April, and May. That should be our last slide. I'll pass it back to Michael.
On that 96.25 success rate, the 3.75% that's not successful, what are those comprised of? What happens with them?
Yeah, some of them might be resulting in either missing data, and we work closely with the counties to share some of these exceptions that are coming out of it. So these are known and or valid exceptions. And obviously, if there are invalid exceptions or anything that results in a defect, we are working to resolve those as they come up. But at least the trend in the last 2 weeks was that there were no invalid exceptions. So these were known to be, I guess, acceptable exceptions from the process, because it does rely on data to be existing in the CalSouth system in order for it to be successful.
Okay. And then I know on the welcome bot and authentication bot, those had some struggles earlier. They went through some fixes, and then they were reinitiated and brought up again. You said 31 call centers are using it. What's the process for a call center to request to use that? They just contact the project and say, we want to use it? Or, I mean, what's the procedure for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So as it is closely tied to the contact center, we do have monthly calls with all the counties. There is also a monthly management call. Each of the counties also have access to a region support mailbox, so they can always reach out to us via the email inbox.
So is it activated by default for all call centers, or do you have to opt into it?
Yeah, right now we're live with all the counties for authentication bot, okay. And then for welcome bot, we're live with 7 counties. So I believe the consortium team and the Accenture team are working together on a reach out to see if any counties are interested in enabling welcome bot now that we've seen a lot more success. But I do know that we're working closely with the consortium team on an outreach there.
Yeah, Michael, we're going to be reaching out to every county that does not have it currently.
Okay, yeah, and I want to pull data for LA when we start to have substantial data to look at.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any questions or comments from our board members, state partners on this presentation?
This is Marla. I have a question. On slide 51, where it says over 1 million calls in February, does that include calls where the caller goes to the self-serve queue and the agents, or just the agents?
Marla, I would say that probably was just showing that volume's there. It is not a specific stat that I think we should be putting out there. I know that they're more indicative of county-specific numbers and operations and things like that. So I think that was an aggregate call that said something like, in through the solution, this is what's come in. So breaking that down and validating it, I think it's more it's more accurate down at the county level for those specific, statistics that you guys have. Yep.
Thanks for clarifying, John. Any other questions or comments from our board members or state partners on this presentation? Okay, any public comment? Okay, then that takes us on to Central Print. Thanks, Akira.
Thank you, Michael. So I will just very briefly remind everybody what Central Print is. This really is intended to address a question we had received about imaging return mail. And so just quickly, reminder on what we're doing, which is Central Print return mail is where we are sending that request to the post office when we receive the mail stream. So the day we get the mail, we are asking the Postal Service, are you going to be able to deliver this? Yes or no? If they say no, they're not going to deliver it. We are today going ahead and journaling those results for the counties who have signed up for return mail. Of course, that's who I'm talking about. The return mail, it's journaled. That official USPS response goes into the journal, and we also either do a report or a task of all of those back to the county per their preference. There is also an option where we can be the return mail center for the county. So in other words, the mail that's sent by Central Print can have a return mail address of our print center, which means when that undeliverable item is not going to make it, it comes back to Central Print. And then we can sort that into things that are you already know about, things that you don't know about, because there are things called carrier-initiated returns, which means the Postal Service didn't know about it at the time I sent them the address. They found out about it when they tried to deliver it. So that's why we have to sort that return mail when it comes in. If you continue to be your own Central Print return mail address, your staff would need to sort that, and we do supply those particular instructions. And if you can go to the next slide, what we did find as we're doing that sort, we're sorting it into the two piles, undeliverable known at the time of mailing, and anything that is that carrier initiated that we didn't know about to be able to pre-journal it. We have worked with thanks to the consortium policy team, we did work with the state partners and have determined that our USPS journal entry, so that's an official item coming from the USPS, does take the place of imaging the envelope. So if we've already journaled, there is no need to image that, whether we're your return mail address or whether you're getting it back yourself. If we have journaled with the official USPS notification, that substitutes, it's actually more reliable than anything you would see on the envelope. Frequently what's on the yellow sticker, which is what you would image, certainly doesn't have any more information. Usually it has less, and it's often not reliable, or sometimes the yellow sticker has simply fallen off. So that stack of mail where we've already journaled it, you don't need to image it. We don't need to image it if we're the return mail. What we did find as we were doing the sort to make sure that we still caught those ones where we didn't know about it up front from the Postal Service is that the yellow sticker isn't as reliable as the Postal Service would have led us to believe. I guess we shouldn't have made that assumption in the first place. So in realizing that and working through this with San Diego, and thanks very much to San Diego for continuing to pilot with us and work with us with the feedback. So as this indicates today, that physical envelope is returned to the county, but because that yellow sticker wasn't always as reliable as we'd hoped, sometimes they were getting back some of the envelopes that had already been journaled. That's irritating because you have to work it, you get a duplicate task. Yeah, it could be better. So we have the plan for how to make it better. We are going to go ahead and ignore what's on the yellow sticker, and we are going to actually barcode the piece of mail when we get it back. And we will then use that barcoded information to tell us we already journaled, definitively we already journaled, or no, we haven't. If the answer is no, we haven't, instead of returning that mail in the future to the county, we're going to image it for you. We have already done enough of a proof of concept to know that all the APIs exist for us to be able to get the image into Highland and to be able to either do a task or we'll send you back a report and we will journal it. So we will take care of all those steps for the county if we find out about it on the back end when the envelope comes back. Now, that I just talked about is under that future button there, if you will. We have completed design. As you just heard me say, we've done some pieces of that to be sure that our concept will work. And we are now moving through the change governance process and moving into development and test. So I don't have a date for deployment yet, but I will soon, and it won't be like terribly long. We've already proof of concepted it. So anyway, we did want to get back and just let you know that we are making some improvements here and answer that question that was asked about can we image? And the answer to that question is most of it we have confirmed you don't need to image, and if you use Central Print as your return mail center, that which needs to be imaged we will now do for you once we deploy this change. And with that, Michael, I will send it back to you.
Well, this is a good example. The devil's in the details. So it's really good to see this continue to evolve as a valuable solution. And thank you to San Diego for kicking the tires here. And hopefully we'll have something real definitive out there that folks can choose and benefit from. Any comments or questions from our state partners or our board members for Gamewell on this presentation? Any public comment? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and move on to the quarterly statistics update. Thank you, Don.
All right, thank you very much. Just confirm you can hear me okay? All right, so I'll go through these rather quickly in the interest of time. So February was a clean month for the core CalSAWS platform. We did have 2 incidents that impacted counties during the month of February on contact center. One was on the 13th between 8:30 a.m. and 9:15, where Placer and Yolo were unable to receive inbound calls. This was related to a migration or an upgrade of the specific instances of those 2 counties. The team was able to resolve it and fix it in short order. Then on the 22nd, Sacramento County experienced issues where there was degraded login experience, to where in the first time agents tried to log in, it may not have worked. It went to a frozen screen, so they had to refresh and try again before they were able to get in. The team was able to determine what the fix was for that as well, and that one did take longer to ultimately resolve. Outside of those 2 incidents, the core CalSAWS reporting, imaging, and all other services were stable. If we move on to the next slide. From an overall code release perspective, we continue to see high quality coming out of the onshore, offshore. This is one of the action items that we have to come back and report on quarterly. You will see the 2401 code quality after we go live with this upcoming release for the 2403 release. So we're still seeing consistent quality coming from our offshore and onshore teams. If we move on to the next slide. Overall ratios for delivery for January were about 31% offshore, 69% onshore. So this is what we were asked to continue to bring forward as we approach the 40% threshold, just to make sure that quality remained consistent, which it is. If we move on to the next slide. Overall production defect backlog, we did see a slight uptick because of recategorization of defects within the contact center space, to where we created copies of the defects for each of the different counties so we could track completion. That's why we see the uptick to the 218. It wasn't an increase in inflow of defects. It was more related to the recategorization of defects. So outside of that anomaly, we're seeing our defects actually go down as the team continues to focus on resolving the incidents, problems, and ultimate JIRA defects. we move on to the next slide. From an overall stability perspective across the CalSAWs for January, reason why we really have those 4 spots were due to the January 26th issue that we had that occurred during the conference for the login services. So that was the primary reason for those 4 misses. If we continue on to the next slide, I'll transition over to Sarah from Highland to cover the imaging statistics.
Thank you, Arnold. So today we're going to review Highland Service Level Agreement results from the last 3 months, starting with uptime, which is the availability of the imaging system, monthly target of 99%. And as you can see, for December, January, and February, there was 100% availability of the system. On the next slide, the monthly page view objective states that the data center will provide viewing access to a 70 kilobyte page document or smaller in 2 seconds or less, with a monthly target of 90%. So for December, there were just over 14.6 million renditions that were 70 kilobytes or smaller, and 97.77% of those were viewable in 2 seconds or less. In January, there were 16.4 million renditions with 98.82% viewable in 2 seconds or less. And for February, there were just over 15.6 million renditions, 70K or smaller, and 99.00% of those were viewable in 2 seconds or less. And the last slide that I have for you today is the database transaction objective, which states that database transactions will be completed in 1 second or less, with a monthly target of 90%. The monthly percentage, as you can see, for all 3 months was very consistent. In December, 99.93% of 2.6 billion queries took 1 second or less. In January, there were more than 3 billion queries, and 99.94% of those took 1 second or less. And in February, we were at 99.94% again of database transactions, and we had just over 2.7 billion queries in the month of February. So that's what we have for Highland for your SLAs. Thank you.
We'll move over to Benefits Cal.
And I'll give you an update. Our 3 service level agreements for Benefits Cal are all tied to response timing from an online view, as well as from information that gets exchanged with external systems. I'll say the key takeaway is that for all 3 of our service level agreements around response time, they have been exceeding at north of 99%. The big takeaway is that we have increased the usage and adoption of Benefits Cal. We have maintained that level of performance in the system. So we don't see any changes in the response time from an end user viewpoint or information that is being pulled from external systems. Okay, I'm going to turn it back over then. I believe that's the end of the metrics conversation, Michael, and we'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, thank you. Arnold, just quickly on the metrics you had, it looks like we've had an event almost every month for a while, like maybe 1 or 2 months where we didn't have one. So is there a concerted focus on trying to get us to more clean, green months where we don't have an event that affects SLAs?
Absolutely. So if we take a look at ForgeRock, core CalSAWs, we've had multiple months of clean metrics there, and so we are putting more of a concerted focus on the contact center as well, which is where we saw in the month of February, all the other services were stable, so we are focusing on the contact center as well to remove those service disruptions. So yes, there continues to be focus.
Okay. And then to Sarah and Rachel on the SLAs for Benefits Cal and also on the imaging as we approach the OCR, kind of online OCR pieces. I'm assuming your teams are going to have a tremendous focus on SLA impacts as we start to venture into that space, because that was one of the reasons it was not enabled initially.
Yeah, absolutely, on the Highland side for sure.
Okay, well, that's Doc upload's one of our big ones. We've really got to make sure we have a focus on that before it ever goes live. So I'll go ahead and open up to any other questions or comments from our board members or state partners on this presentation. Okay, any public comment? Okay, thank you, Arnold, Sarah, and Rachel. We'll go ahead and move on to customer engagement roadshows, John.
Good afternoon again. This is Peggy Macias. So I am going to introduce to you today our upcoming initiative on our maintenance and enhancement M&E roadshows that is going to be conducted by our customer engagement team. So now that we are now 58 counties, migration is over, we're officially in M&E. And one of the first objectives for M&E is to educate and re-educate our counties on our governance processes and the different things that we have established in working together. So we need to, continue working together and support and help of each other. And so we will be doing these roadshows that will cover the different processes that we have in place for our counties to really be a testament that our governance processes really work as they are, or do we need to pivot and make changes? So as a result of doing these roadshows, we will gather feedback and discuss future changes to our governance processes. Next slide, please. So how are we going to be requesting and introducing our upcoming roadshows? So we're going to be using our CRFI process to provide information on our upcoming roadshows, which includes the date, the time, the targeted audience for our roadshows, and other pertinent information. The roadshows are going to start in March, which is this month. Actually, next week, our first roadshow is being offered. Each month, our topics are going to change and highlight our different areas. Our roadshows will be virtual and will be facilitated by our RMs. So there's multiple sessions for each topic so that county staff can pick and choose a session that fits their schedules and ensure counties have meet their coverage needs. Again, the topics that we've compiled come from various areas such as county staff feedback in different meetings, like regional meetings, our leadership meetings, and one-on-one meetings. Next slide. This is our schedule. Again, it just gives you kind of a timeline of the next few months for the roadshows that we have planned. In March, we're doing our governance topic. In April, we're going to be talking about ticketing. In May, we'll be doing our SCR life cycle. In June, we're going to be talking about our CCCV processes, and we're still working on our July topic. Next slide. Okay, so what can you expect for our first roadshow? Again, it's on governance. It's scheduled for the 19th, 20th, and 21st next week. We have over 600 participants that have signed up for the 3 sessions. Again, our roadshow number 2 will be on ticketing, and our CRFI for that roadshow was released on March 12th. And we expect to receive our responses from the counties by March 25th. And we will be providing additional updates for the roadshows during future meetings. Michael, back to you for questions.
Oops, I clicked on the wrong button and my screen moved. Can you guys hear me? Okay, good. I'm glad to see this. I think this is really important at this stage of the project as part of adaptive organization and continuous learning, is to continue to assess and evaluate our processes. So I'm very hopeful that that's the way this is being approached, is to look at it, find out what ways to make this more effective and engaging for the counties. And if we come up with some, ideas that are dramatic changes, that we take them seriously and we figure out how to implement those in a way that makes this organization that's been effective to this point even more effective going forward. So I'm hopeful that's our goal here. And then in terms of soliciting interest, you got 600 people already. Did this come out through the RMs? Is that how it's kind of shared at the county level?
No, it went out through via CRFI.
It went to CRFI.
Yeah, we sent out official communication, and we'll continue to do that with the future road shows. So we're excited about it. Our RMs have been working really, really hard to practice and prepare. So we have a small team that's helping us currently get things ready, so that once our small team, our support team goes away, we have our processes established for continuing this. So this isn't really a one and done, meaning once we do the road show, we expect the counties to, the lights to come on and say, oh yeah, I get it now. We'll continue with re-education, supporting, asking questions via the RMs and their continued meetings within the counties and within the regions, and inviting other people to hear the information. So we're hopeful that this really will get us all level set us all for our governance processes. And as you said, we would really test them all out, and if there are suggestions or ideas or things that we uncover that where we may need to pivot, then we will definitely consider that.
Appreciate that. Okay, thank you. Any comments, questions from our board members or state partners on this presentation item? Hearing none, any public comment? Okay, hearing none. I think that, John, that brings us to our last item, unless my list is short.
Nope, we got to our last item 15 minutes early.
I love it. We actually made it early. I don't want to set that expectation always.
Talk about reports some more.
Yeah, there were a couple heavy hitters in the middle of this, but we did finish a little ahead of schedule. I thank everybody for helping make that a possibility here. I'm looking forward. Our next meeting's Friday, April 12th at 12:30. I think you back at the Library Galleria for those who go in person. Any other parting thoughts or comments, John, to share with anyone?
I think that's it, Michael. Everybody have a great weekend.
All right, everyone. Thank you very much for your commitment and dedication. Enjoy your weekend. Take care. Bye.